you assign?
I'm not sure. It is 2:30. I will call the Salina City Commission study session to order. And again, I'll look to Mr. Scragg to see if he has any opening remarks.
We're kind of picking up where we left off, and Ms. Pack certainly has it under control. I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance. Today we are wrapping up our issues and options section of the budget, which, as you know, is kind of the final section of the budget where you kind of give us indications on how you want us to do certain things so that we can put those numbers into the budget so that we can bring those back for final approval in the next month or so. Today we'll be finishing up our issues and options. The first issue and option we will be discussing is comprehensive fees. On July 3rd, we presented the comprehensive fees to you in totality. Today, we're not going to go over all of those. We kind of looked at those before and how they're being increased and why and things like that. But I would like to address a couple of those that you had specific questions about, just to make sure that you have the answers that you need to make decisions for this budget. So we'll skip over to slide 8. And if you had questions about any of these that I don't address, please feel free to stop me and we can go back and look at those and see what's going on with those fees. On slide 8, we talked about the cremation services. We were under the understanding that no longer existed. I did confirm with Parks and with the animal shelter that does exist still, but it does not exist on a private basis. We no longer provide private cremations, nor do we provide it for vets or animal hospitals. However, we do provide a public cremation situation, or if the animal services picks up animals on the street that have been hit by a car or something like that. They do still have that kind of service, but we don't do anything private.
Who pays that fee then?
Well, I don't think that if they pick them up off the street, anybody would pay it unless we could determine an owner. But I would think that's more of the public. If, for example, your pet passed away and you wanted to have it cremated, they would do a public with multiple. You wouldn't get any ashes back or something like that. That's kind of my understanding. Okay. Instead of having to take it, because you do have to dispose of it some way. I don't know if Jeff's here, so I'm just kind of looking.
And then that's the difference between a public and a private?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. That's my understanding. That's how they explained it to me. Yep. And then the next item that we talked about quite a bit and had some long conversations you had several questions about were the sanitation fees, specifically the second cart fees. So we asked sanitation to reach out to other providers in the area, and on slide 9 is the information that they were able to provide for us. They included what their monthly standard fee was, asked the question, do you provide an extra or do you offer us additional carts? And the answer from both of those was yes. And how much is each of those carts? One of them was $7 per cart. One of them was $13 per cart. When staff spoke to them, one of them did feel like our low number, our $2 per cart, was kind of very not competitive for him and did have a negative impact on their particular business. Some of the other questions they asked were about items outside the cart and things like that. So you can see kind of where those answers were, if they have bulky item and things like that, whether those were still available. They were trying to get a bigger picture of what those services were that were being provided by the other providers in town. The other question we asked was, are those carts full when people are putting them out to the cart? Is it a waste of efficiency to have multiple carts and maybe only half full? They did talk to the drivers about that, and they kind of felt like they didn't have an answer. It was hard for them to see the cart when it was being dumped because it was blocked. It was blocked from their view from the driver's side. Some of the statistics on second carts, according to our numbers, we have 6,249 customers that have 2 carts. We have 789 customers that have more than 2 carts, and we have a total of 14,827 customers. That leaves about 7,700, 7,800 with 1 cart. So about 47.5% of our customers have 2 or more carts. I did do a little bit of calculation on that because I knew you had talked about increasing that number, an increase of up to $5. I just was curious out of my own mind, what would that generate? So that's an additional $3 a cart. And assuming on the 2-cart, they would pay that additional 2, it's about $225,000 a year. Assuming that the 2-cart, or the more than 2-cart was just 3 carts, I didn't know there could be some with 3, 4, 5, that would be an additional about $57,000 for a 3-cart customer. So that would be additional revenue to the sanitation system.
So not to get all economic 101 on you, but there's what's called price elasticity. As you raise prices, then the receptivity of that might change. So those numbers assume
Everybody
no one
stays.
decides to give carts back because of the price increase.
That's right.
Hard to say how many might do that.
Yeah.
Do we need to give you an answer now on what we want to do on that? How do we want to proceed on that?
Well, we're not taking final action on the comprehensive fee schedule today. If you have feedback or consensus, we can certainly factor that in. You could amend it on the fly at the time that the adoption's on your agenda, if need be.
Well, if the competition's going to pick up 5 extra 32-gallon bags that sit next to their 1 cart, I'd leave the whole thing alone. Yeah, I wouldn't consider raising our price for a second cart.
My comment has always been, I think $2 for that extra cart's a little low. I mean, even $5 when you consider the extra wear and tear on the equipment to lift it every time. When you calculate the fact that we bought those carts and at some point we're going to replace those, there's going to be a fee and investment in that. I just think $2 a cart. I'm surprised, except I don't want to have to mess with the room. I'm surprised everybody doesn't have 2 carts for an extra $2. So
yeah, and as I think we reported previously, when we rolled this program out, there was concern on the staff's part that we were in a competitive environment. We weren't. This is not franchise trash hauling where there's only one hauler. And so, to Commissioner Ryan's point, with competitors willing to not necessarily require a cart or allow bags outside of a cart or pick up miscellaneous loose items outside of a cart, there was concern that we might price ourselves out of our customer base. I think we do have enough time under our belt now that I don't know that a price increase would, financially significantly harm operations, but so that puts it back in your lap as kind of a discretionary call, I guess.
And to answer your question about timing, these rates do not go into effect till January 1st of 2024. If you chose to leave it like it is now, we could certainly come back and have another discussion and bring you whatever information that you would like. I could certainly volunteer Mr. Teutsch to come up with a study session. You're welcome, Jim. To provide or whatever time you need to do that. I mean, they obviously would have more data than I would ever have as far as that question comes.
So I do think people are paying attention in the community. So if you're going to take that route, rather than maybe semantics, but rather than characterize it as leaving it where it is, I would encourage you to say you want to consider it further, just so we don't set some expectation that you've confirmed the current rate when you're really giving it more thought, if that's the case.
Are we raising our per cart fee annually on just the regular pickup,
Yes.
correct?
Yes. It's going from $18.25 to $19.
So
So it's a 4% increase on just the regular service.
what percent? 4?
4.
Is there a maximum on the number of carts that you can subscribe to, or just,
No, I didn't think there was, but no.
wow, okay. That just seems ridiculously cheap. And granted, I am a customer with 3 carts, but I think at some point it would seem like you're almost kind of gaming the system if you were to say order 10 of them, or, I mean, it just, because the extra cart for $2 to me is like a customer courtesy. I mean, that price is obviously not one reflective of we're trying to recapture expenditures. I mean, maybe I'm odd man out for thinking $5 is reasonable for an extra cart, but I guess we can consider it later.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because the expense is lifting it up And it has to be disposed of. I mean, we charge ourselves to use our...
Well, we're transporting it.
We're transporting it
It's-
and the cost of the landfill. I'm just curious, does hometown disposal specialize in a certain type of pickup? I just noticed their cost was much
Yeah,
higher. I'm just curious. No?
I don't know if Ms. Pack knows. I'm sure Mr. Toich
Mr.
does.
Torch probably knows.
Go ahead
And
come
he's shaking
forward,
his...
Jim.
Okay.
Thank you for volunteering, Debbie. I appreciate that. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, no, they're residential and I think commercial, regular sanitation pickup. If it would be, if that's the general consensus, I would think the only thing I would offer is if we're going to raise it, doing it consistently over time, much the way that we do our sanitation rates would be the most palpable. Part of the decision was definitely, as you described, that it's a matter of convenience. The primary reason for the low price, though, was exactly what Commissioner Ryan said. And what the city manager indicated, that we are competing in an open market with others, and those others allow items outside the cart. 5 bags is a cart. So looking at the price of what they charge for a second cart, I think is misleading. We are charging $2 where they are charging nothing to pick up additional items. So that was our approach, and that's why we did it. But like, for example, if you decided that you wanted to start keeping it in line with, if we make a change to the sanitation rate, then we would adjust that rate, at the same time for that same amount. For example, in this case, a 5% increase is 10 cents, so it goes from 2 to 2.10. And if you do that over time, that would certainly probably make it better easier on the customers. Our greatest concern is that we lose a lot of customers because of the additional costs. And the other thing that I think someone mentioned that I would point out is, yes, we paid for these carts. These carts at $2, 12 times, $24 a year. The cart is paid for in a little, I think, 2.5 years, less than 3 years, the cart is fully paid for. After that, we're not trying to make a large profit, but we do gain additional revenues by that $2, which then when it does come time to do an annual cart purchase, which is how we will replace these carts in the future, it makes it that we have funds available in the sanitation fund to cover the cost of those carts.
Do you think it would make sense to raise the price maybe $1 just to test and see what reaction you get, or that'd be a waste of time?
We would do whatever you would like. I mean, if you asked me for what I thought would be what I think would be the best approach, I would suggest that it would be something close to how we raise the rates for the sanitation rates.
And I generally don't.
Probably don't want an odd amount of money, though. It's $2. That's nice and round now. You don't want to be 5% of that and be
210.
2 and 210.
Yeah, I think you've got two things going on here. One is whether the base rate is set right, and then how you increase the base rate. But I think one of the questions you raised is whether the base is correct to begin with. So a percentage increase would work, and if you're comfortable with that initial starting point. But if your initial concern is whether we're just undercharging from the get-go, then a percentage increase won't ever catch you back up.
Agreed.
Well, I'm just sitting here doing the math, and I guess for Salina Waste Systems, if you don't have a second cart, you can put 5 bags. You said 5 of those is a cart. Boy, we'd be bumping up against that. I guess if $1 made a difference, in my monthly budget, then I might go that route. Or if I was just lazy and didn't want to recycle stuff and separate stuff that goes in the trash can, or had a lot of yard waste wouldn't fit in the trash can, you know, those 5 bags come in handy. But
Well, I will say to that argument that it wouldn't be without precedent. We do sometimes have to make one-time corrections, as Mike mentions, to the base. We're doing that this year with engineering as an example. So, I mean, it is something that does happen. So if you felt that $3 was more representative, or at least gets us closer to that base, and then from there we do an annual increase, or however you would like to proceed, we can certainly implement that.
how much of an increase does the $19 represent that we'll be using in 2024?
4.1%.
4.1.
So we're like, what, $18? And I'm trying to do the
From
math real quick.
1825 to 19, and it's 4.1% increase.
So whatever that difference is from that figure to get to $1 total increase, I don't know, is it 25 cents?
I would be in favor of increasing it, just for the matter of efficiency, because I've long suspected that people put out 3 carts that are half full, rather than utilizing the space and just the time and mechanical wear on the equipment for cart.
So I guess the only thing I would say in response is, like, many of the carts, the reason that customers have multiple carts is because, for instance, I also have 3 carts, and I use 2 carts to put grass and tree clippings and all of that kind of stuff in. And I will say, to the degree that carts are emptied, I know that when I mow my yard on a Saturday, by the time they pick up my trash the following week, there is certainly room where those organics have settled, and it creates additional room. But initially, that cart is full. I would suspect that, at least in my neighborhood, that's the case that's the majority of the customers that are going through that. But I cannot say better than what the drivers were able to report, and they're just not able to be accurate about it. I will say that we adjust for the cost of the maintenance on the equipment and that kind of stuff via the sanitation rate. We do not try to calculate a cost associated with the ancillary costs. So when we do the calculation to determine what is needed for the sanitation rate, that would include things like maintenance and repetitive use. From the sanitation superintendent's perspective, he's already at this site. He already has a truck there, and it's literally less than 30 seconds to pick up that additional cart. So
if I may, it doesn't appear that consensus is percolating here, and we do have a 3:30 Lower Smoky Hill meeting as well. So it sounds like there's enough interest and conversation that this probably merits additional consideration at a different time.
Does the landfill charge the city on paper to dump the trucks?
yes, yes.
All right.
So is there still that big a volume of grass clippings goes to landfill?
Yes.
But 6 months a year, people are paying for those carts to be emptied, and they probably don't actually have to be lifted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, think about it. We'll be back.
So we will bring this particular item back to you. We would normally bring it back to you when we adopt the budget, which is now scheduled for September the 11th. I don't know if that's enough time, or if we want to go forward with, as it has been recommended, and have a conversation about it, with the possibility of changing it later.
To be honest with you, I think I heard more, let's raise it to something than to
Yeah.
leave it where it's at.
Right.
So, I mean, even if we come up with a consensus, let's try $1 and see, for a year, see how that affects our cart usage or something, because it's got to be worth something to somebody to be able to roll a cart out to the curb versus carrying 3 bags or 2 bags of grass every week. There's a, there's something worth, I mean, if I had my choice, and if I did catch grass, I'd pay $2 to be able to put it in a cart and roll it out than have to pick up bags and have them break on the way to the curb and all that. So, and I do think it is additional wear and tear on equipment. Whether we're taking that in consideration or not, I'm not sure. So, I'd at least like to, mine would be to see $1, and let's see what it does to us.
I'm good with that.
Okay, let's raise it $1.
There you go.
I retract my prior statement. That sounds like consensus. All right.
Agree.
I've been married for 44 years. I know how to negotiate.
Okay, so that then, as a response to that option, we'll leave the other fees as they've been recommended, and we'll change that fee to $3 for the adoption of the comprehensive fees schedule later.
So one other thing as it relates to fees, I just want to acknowledge that you previously asked about special event fees, and we remain committed to bringing that back as a standalone report once we get through this season, and that could result in standalone changes to those fees.
The next issue is we'll get into agency contracts now, which are the outside agencies that we support with funding throughout the year. The first one's the Salina Chamber of Commerce. The city has been in an agreement with them since 1977, and currently the Salina Chamber of Commerce receives about 48% of the total transient guest tax that's collected, and that is broken out for them. 38%, about 39% goes to Visit Salina, 6.45% goes to cultural arts marketing, and about 2.58% goes to Kenwood Cove and Oakdale marketing. In 2023, we budgeted $984,200 total. 2024 budget estimate is $1,356,667 in total, which means that we're estimating that the total transient guest tax is going to be about $2.8 million. This is under an agreement. In order to change that agreement, we'd have to come back with another agreement. So basically, this one is just whether you want to direct us to budget it as we've estimated based on that agreement, or take other action as far as that agreement goes moving forward.
Comments from any commissioners?
And just keep it the way you have it.
Yep.
Take advantage of the good years.
Okay.
And really that's a pass-through, so that whatever we collect will go to them.
And the new project, the 1.05, for those looking, that's the additional transient guest tax we added to help fund.
That's correct.
Sort of
And
that
those
type of
funds
stuff,
will
yeah.
go, starting next year, go to the debt service fund to pay that debt on those improvements. That's correct. Okay, the next issue is then Salina Downtown Inc. Contract support. SDI has 2 supplements that they receive from the city. The first is an operating supplement, and they also receive a facade grant supplement from the city. The third, one of the other major revenue supplement or revenue generators for them is the Lee District fees that are assessed to the businesses in that district. In 2023, SDI received a $60,000 general fund stipend and a $60,000 facade grant. In 2024, they're requesting an $80,000 operating supplement, which is a 33% increase over what was budgeted and approved in 2023. And they're requesting a $60,000 facade grant supplement for 2024, which is a 0% increase. As I mentioned, that particular funding comes from the Sales Tax Economic Development Fund. In addition, SDI has a transfer agreement that provides them 40.6% of the CID funding from the downtown CID. In 2022, that amount of funding that was generated for SDI was about $158,000. Through May, we've collected and provided to them about $78,500. To date, that's about $390,000 over the last 3 years. In addition to SDI receiving that supplement, there's also 18.9% of the downtown CID that is set aside for existing retail improvements. That fund has about $188,000 currently sitting in it. We collected about $71,000 in 2022. In 2023 through June, we've collected about $36,000. As I mentioned, BID does does have fees for the tenants of that district, and I provided here their history of increases of those fees. As you recall from our study session earlier on when they came forward, they are proposing a 30% increase to the BID fees, which should generate we're estimating about $130,000 in revenue for SDI. So the options, I provided you some historical data about what's been provided for them. As I mentioned earlier, their request is for supplement is about 33%, an increase of about 33%. So the options that we've provided for you, and you can take any or all these or make up your own, is to authorize the funding as they've requested. Instead of doing a dollar amount, you could do a percentage. You could fund them at the 2023 amount, or like I said, basically do whatever you feel is the correct funding for SDI for the 2024 budget. And then the second option that I'd like for you to affirm for us is that we'll increase those fees for SDI or for the downtown district by the 30% that they've recommended. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, I know there's representatives from SDI here as well.
For a typical store, I don't want to pick a name out of the hat, but in hard dollars, what does a 30% increase look like?
Leslie might be able to tell me that. I'm not
She's
sure if I
on
have that.
on her way to rescue you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. It's averaging about $12 an increase a year if we did, on an average business. And then, we have the three different sections in the BID, and so yeah, averaging about $12, $13 a year increase. Typically what I've seen historically, we've only increased the BID dues about 1.5 up to 2.2%, so this is but my board, with all the good things that we're doing, and then not having raised the BID dues for close to almost 4 years, this is what our board of directors came to. And when we have talked to some of our downtown merchants. First they hear 30% and it's, shocking, but then you tell them, breaking it down, it amounts to about $13 a year more. And on the facade funding, I will let you know, to date, we have $3,000 left in that funding that we received for +23, and we already have 2 businesses, if you will, that are going to be waiting for the '24 facade funding. And then, so our $3,000 that is left for this year could help a mini grant. So, possibly a new signage on the, a new vinyl for their window, that kind of thing.
And I think you've pretty much used the facade grant money up every year. I mean,
we do.
So, yeah, that's. And
What is the average fee business pays for the dues?
It's not a good average.
And
Are
does
you
it,
able to summarize the fee structure?
Okay, so yes, I can do that. So on Santa Fe, which is defined as the business district, the fee structure is figured out. They have a base fee, and then added to that is the square footage of their business. And then in the side streets, so Iron, that kind of thing, 5th and 7th and a portion of 8th and a portion of 4th, that's the employee district. So again, they have a base fee, and then their BID dues are based on how many employees. And then the hospital and the alley, those are the hospital mill district. And that's just like the employee, or I believe it's the employee with the base fee, and all the fees have a cap. And so it's obviously makes advantage. And then the upstairs businesses that are on Santa Fe, so for example, we have a couple of photography studios. Those are also base fee based on employees. So, and merchants can pay their BID dues either monthly, quarterly, or annually. And so depending upon, and Maggie and I, who is a great help to us, we are seeing that we have those who are in the rears, but that has shrunk, so that's encouraging. So, and our merchants are seeing what we're doing, so we don't get the pushback on those BID dues like we have been.
How do you handle, two questions, vacant buildings, and how do you handle like the BID for like lofts or on second floors? Are they assessed anything at all?
You mean residential lofts?
Yeah.
No, they don't have any torpid. And then vacant buildings, the nice thing is for us that the building owners we don't have so many, we have a smaller amount. They're actively trying to find tenants for those buildings. We also work closely with another entity in downtown that does business in downtown, a realty company. I have talked to the owners of a couple of buildings, try to encourage them to get their building moving, but that's...
But they're not charged
Oh, yes, they're charged.
They're charged based on square footage
Yes,
at least,
yes,
and
yes,
no
yes.
employees.
I see,
Okay,
yes.
okay, that's
The
what I
vacant
was getting
buildings
at.
are charged
Okay.
BID, yes.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So,
Yep,
okay,
yep.
thank you.
Are your service industries and nonprofits charged the same?
No, they are not. So Love Chloe is not charged. The Symphony, Stiefel, Salina Shares,
KU School of Medicine?
KU School of Medicine, correct?
What
They are
about
not
like
charged
you-
BID dues or any type of due.
What about like banks and?
Banks do pay, yes.
Is that, and I'm just going to throw this out there, is that set up by our ordinance? Because the reason I say is, you know, we're spending money cleaning the downtown. I mean, you know, we've gotten security cameras now. We've done some things that I'm not so sure that shouldn't be addressed a little bit, that there shouldn't be some kind of assessment if you're going to be downtown, even if you're nonprofit.
So that started as
I
a
just
question
always like
headed
to
my
cause
way, I think. The business improvement districts are authorized by statute, so there is some overarching guidance. And I know we approve the fees rates annually, but I would have to take a little bit of a deeper dive into how much latitude we have for different categories and how that might be set up. But that,
I mean, because there's a lot of square footage now that we have that's, you know, mainly when you look at the KU School of Medicine and nursing downtown. And I don't want to, you know, burden it, but I think there should be and I don't even, because at one time we even looked at making it voluntary when I was on the board or something. Of course, that's never going to probably happen.
Well, and if those institutions are benefiting from the services provided, it
I
would
will.
make
I
more
would like to
sense.
add. Sorry for the interruption. That we do have a tiered partnership program where businesses within the BID, as well as businesses outside of the BID, can contribute in a partnership manner to Salina Downtown Incorporated. I will let you know that the Salina Symphony is a partner with us, the Stiefel Theater is a partner with us, and the Salina Art Center is a partner with us, and Salina Regional Health Center. So that is some income or some partnership money.
we certainly can take a look at the specifics of that and report back. I don't know that, if you want to proceed with this, I think that'd be appropriate.
Yeah,
and we can
that's for good.
Future.
Some for future, but yeah, and the 30% increase, it's Leslie's phone that's going to ring, not ours, I guess, so.
Sounds like she's already got her message crafted, though. Yeah.
I have a very.
Don't focus on the percentage, focus on the dollar.
Yeah,
I have a proactive president of my board of directors.
okay.
Could I ask about the CID funds at 18.9%? I assume if the balance is 188,000. Have you been using that as you go along? My recollection is it's for programming and security, and what are your
Maintenance.
plans to?
Well, we would
use
like
that?
to increase, and I'm talking with the police department today, more security camera, especially on 7th and 8th, and on some of our side streets. We also would like to enhance the holiday season by adding lights to all of the buildings downtown, and just increase the festive atmosphere. We also are going to be talking about increasing our trash pickup, the pedestrian way trash pickup. And then, of course, just the the cost of business is higher, as you know, so that will our beautiful pots and hanging baskets. We would like to, do some things on the side streets once we discuss with the city how that might work in partnership. So, and we want to enhance some of the plazas to add more color. So Phillips Plaza, for example, and Spillman. So those are areas that we're, and then we'd like to do a digital billboard at Ash and Santa Fe on City Light Stage. Outdoor music, audio music, I'm waiting to get a bid back on that so we can have some outdoor music on the sidewalks. So that's, and then maintenance, just the general wear and tear of our truck. Those kinds of things.
Is that 188 a constant revenue stream, or is that just what's
The
accumulated?
188 that you're referencing is actually a separate pool of dollars that is more like a new retailer that's driven by 2020. So those are not the funds being used by SDI for facade or their improvements.
Understand.
That's the 40%.
Yeah, I think we provided that number in addition to the facade grant money that SDI has, there's that
That would
pot
be
of funds
available for
available for
existing
existing.
retailers.
If you recall the complexity of that development agreement and funding structure for star bonds, I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head how many segregated
So how
funds
much
there
a
were.
year is being generated there? I guess is the question.
Generated
Getting it.
for
From
the,
that CID, from the portion that goes to the SDI.
that goes to SDI?
In 2022 is about 160,000, and we're on target to hit that again this year.
Okay, so there's
Yeah,
160 a year as a revenue stream.
yep.
And I will say, and I hope I don't word this wrong, coming in midstream, but SDI's loan or obligation to the star bonds has been paid in full. Am I referring to that correctly?
I'm not
sure what you're
sure I
talking.
ever had
You ever-
saw SDIs
Never mind.
having-
Well, evidently, at one point, there was a loan, and we had some money that we had to pay back, and I have been told it's been paid in full. So I'm sorry if I misspoke. Maybe it was something different.
Okay.
We have no outstanding debt with the city, let me say that.
Yeah.
And we're doing really good work.
Okay, thank
So
you,
getting back to that, then so your options would be, as the others, is to fund as requested, fund as we did in 2023, or another amount or a percentage, just to give us direction as far as how you want to fund both the operating supplement and the facade supplement.
Any changes made to the budgeting, or is everybody okay
Well,
with it?
I just think the 33% increase is a lot. We can't continue doing that every year. So I guess I would question, long-term plans.
Right, that 33% represents a $20,000 increase over the operating supplement that was requested from 23 to 24 from the city.
Commissioner Longbody, were you referring to the 30% increase in BID dues?
No, your
Oh.
supplement request
okay,
is
excuse me.
essentially a third. One thing that we've talked about in the past is trying to synchronize the city's increase to the increase in BID fees. That seems to be a persistent conversation, that we're asked for an increase, and as you can see from the history, they didn't have increases for a while. It just so happens this year they're proposing 30% compared to the 33, but going forward, again, commissions change, and you can always change directions, but one possibility is to kind of communicate an expectation that our increases as a percentage are going to be more in line with their increases as a percentage. And you might be able to justify this year's because they've got
I
a
agree with that
30% increase.
approach, and I seem to recall that they had built up some substantial reserves, and at one point the conversation was, well, how come you got all these reserves, and why are you asking us?
Yeah, I think that was in the,
There was an effort to have them spend that down, and I think that
Right.
is where we got into the situation where there weren't increases, which helps me justify making a bump
Yeah.
now, but we ought to be on that track you describe, I think, to keep things steady.
so that reserve balance, I think, was in the facade grant program. And they were asking for additional funding for the next year of facade grants. And so there was a concerted effort to spend down the existing balance before that fund was replenished. So it was more on the facade grant side than it was their operational side.
It'd be noteworthy to look at, 5 years ago, there were no lights downtown during the holiday season. I mean, there was no one on the sidewalk to play music for. I mean, we're doing a lot more now, which, it would seem reasonable. It's going to cost a little bit more.
Yeah, we are doing a lot, and it's very nice. I got one request, though. I'd like to see Christmas lights going across Santa Fe and Iron like they used to do.
Sure did.
We can make the overhead structures ready. We have the technology for that.
We do that every year. Now it's automated.
Across
Yeah,
the
right.
street.
Now it's
We
automated.
can do it faster.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the question is what the additional supplement money goes to. The facade grant, that 60,000 is used all the time. I think that's money well spent to help individuals enhance their buildings. So,
I agree.
any adjustments anybody want to make, or you?
No, I mean, we weren't bashful when we had to cut it back when we didn't think we had the funding.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I think there's a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting and fun to watch, see what the extra money does. So next year, be a conversation.
I know from being downtown, the streets are cleaner, and the flower, the pots that they're responsible for sure look good. You get a lot of comments on them, so I think that it enhances the downtown. So, okay, we'll move on to the next one.
And then the 30% increase from the fees is, you'll affirm that. We'll bring that back also as we have to adopt that by resolution. The next agency request is OCCK. OCCK's been doing this business with us for 15 years. This year's request is $947,048. That is an increase of about 16%. 11.17% over 2023. As you recall, back in 2020, 2021, the KDOT did provide more funding than what they normally do, which is 70%. So the city did not have to support them at the full amount that we had budgeted those particular years. And then there again, I'm not going to go through their whole detail because I think you know what they do for us. We can authorize this amount at their request, which is, like I said, about 11.7% or 11.17% above their 2023 request. Come up with a different percentage, do what we've done in the past, or take any other action you might feel is appropriate.
Well, it may just be me, and maybe we were fortunate that the Department of Transportation helped out there a couple of years, but we've had an ongoing conversation about the percentage of those increase rises, and they've bothered me and they've bothered prior commissioners. I think 11% is unsustainable, so I think we need to do something to push back. I don't fault them for trying to get even and catch up, but that's a pretty good budget push. I don't think I'd be in favor of 11%. I wouldn't push back hard probably, but if we fix it at 10 or 9, I mean, there needs to be a sensible escalation there, because it's going to get out of hand considering the size compared to our relative budget. I know they're very passionate about what they do, but everybody's got to find the push and shove in their budget.
Yeah, we
That's just me.
had a significant increase last year, and this one's even a little more significant. I guess we have to decide as a commission and as a city, what do we have a cap on what we want to, to spend, and what do.
I'm doing this from memory, but I believe some of that increase was to retain their drivers and to bring their
Yeah, as you can see by
salaries up.
their request on slide 21, part of that increase was a 3% COLA for their employees and an increase of their base wage for, I believe it's drivers, from $16 to $17 an hour.
Are their drivers certified at the same level as our?
Maybe more so. I think if we have a hard time getting CDLs, and I think they're CDL drivers.
Yeah.
all of our drivers extensive training. They also are required to have a CDL. If you look at the city and county wage scale for CDL drivers, we are under both the county and the city. For us to maintain the quality of service that we've been offering, we have to certainly have quality staff. I certainly understand what Commissioner Ryan is saying about an increase. 2022, if we look at what the prices of fuel was, we actually exceeded the city's funding. We actually exceeded KDOT's funding, and we operated basically the last month of operating the services at OCCK's dime. We cannot continue to provide this service and for us to subsidize it. That's not just something that we can't do. Prices are going to increase, certainly going from 16 to 17. Really, I'd like to go to 18. I think the new norm nowadays is almost 20. For us to maintain quality staff and to get quality staff, we have to stay competitive. Again, we're under both county and city's hourly rate for CDL drivers, so that's certainly part of the increase. Other associated costs has gone up, as Mike knows with the city, and as all of you do who run businesses, everything has gone up. The increase from 2021 to 2022 was not that high. I don't know if Debbie has that in front of you, but it wasn't much of an increase, if anything. The agreement we have with Debbie and Mike with the city, this is a not to exceed agreement. It can be under that, as in 2021, in 2020, and 2021, as Debbie pointed out, money was actually given back to the city. If costs stabilize and if costs go down, we would not be billing the city for the full amount of our request. So, and that's really too easy. I mean, too early to make that call. Again, we're fortunate enough that the KDOT funds what the service we're providing for Salina at a 70% match. So that's, I don't think that's going to change. I think the days of free money is over, and KDOT's not going to, if anything, KDOT is looking at reducing certain funding for certain programs, and public transportation could be one of them.
Have you increased the bus pass fees?
We have not. It's kind of, well, it's not a catch-22, but how KDOT, how we do the KDOT budget, we do income expenses. So if we increase the fees, the amount of the KDOT grant goes down. So it doesn't really offset any expenses, because we have to report ridership fees on our KDOT grant, and it directly reduces.
Either way, this is highly subsidized by taxpayers.
Well, yeah, the whole program's subsidized by taxpayers.
Whether it comes from KDOT or the city.
Yeah. We do some of our other services outside of Salina are not taxpayer supported. You know, certainly the agreement we have, and we've had since 2000 with Salina Regional Health Center, which they provide funding for the Manavan program. The other projects we do throughout the state are not funded by city and county. City Go is. I mean, it's funded either by KDOT or funded by the match by the city. So I agree, and Commissioner Ryan, I certainly agree with you. 11% increase is a pretty good increase, but we have not had that kind of increase in an awful lot of years. In 2 years, we actually gave money back to the city, where KDOT funded 100% of the operation. So I don't know. I mean, we got increased costs, as you all know. Wages is a good part, and salary related. We have a really good benefit package. We were lucky enough a long time ago, I still don't know how I pulled it off, but we belong to Capers. You know, that's a 10% match that we have to come up with, and that percentage is going up in 2023. Health insurance, as we all know, is going up. So gas is somewhat stabilized. Other expenses haven't. Obviously, the maintenance on our vehicles, the number of miles we put on them is really inexpensive. So that's kind of my thinking behind the 11% increase. Can I say that we probably won't exceed our request in fiscal year '24? No, I can't. I don't know. If anything, like we did in 2022, we could go over it. And again, in 2022, we were $80,000 under the city part. Part of that, of course, was KDOT, so it's about a $30,000 expense that OCCK had to provide services. We cannot afford to continue to do
The
that.
paratransit, explain the paratransit again. That's individuals that call for
Yeah.
just specific rides, and is that
Yeah.
to doctors' offices, to the whatever?
Right. It's on-demand. Some refer to as curb to curb. Some refer to as door to door. But it is. You have to schedule it.
And that there is a fee for that to the
$2 one way. Yeah.
$2 one way.
And there's also a qualification to be eligible for that?
Salina requires and ADA requires this. If you have a fixed route service, that you have to qualify to ride the para system. So they don't want people that's capable of riding CityGo to be doing by using the on-demand call-in. Now there are qualifiers to that. If you're more than half a mile away from the bus stop, you would qualify. Certain medical conditions, you would qualify. But if not, everybody within Salina, since this is where our fixed route is, has to qualify to receive the on-demand paratransit service.
Okay, thank you.
So if it's helpful, Commissioners, we do seem to have this conversation, and Mr. Valerius is correct. It's been all over the place, especially with COVID and the way KDOT kind of handled that funding, which was favorable to us, that they covered it fully. I think what we have, in my observation of what's gone on in the past, you've got kind of a combination of the operational expenses that he mentioned today, whether that's wages or fuel or benefits, and then you've got service expansions and revisions and projects and individual things that are maybe one time or maybe scope changes, and it seems like a lot of our conversation focuses on those individual items. So I don't think it's completely inappropriate to say, we want to settle into something a little bit more predictable. Not to say that it's a fixed percentage every time, but kind of communicate an expectation that we have an operation, we're just going to address annual cost increases more so than solicit expansions and new projects.
Yeah, the problem I have is we don't really control this. I mean, with our other departments, we say we want to see this much increase or that much increase. We're saying
Right.
you need to watch your costs. There's also, the routes that go to Abilene and Concordia. It's hard for me to balance what we're paying for and what we're not paying for because we don't actually control it. And I agree. I think we need to say, not that it's going to be a 5% increase every year, but we're not going to do the 15% and 11% on an annual basis. So I'm not sure how we want to look at it this year. I'm not sure they're budgeting to what we're giving them or they're budgeting, to what they really need. Because I don't know if all the routes, if it was us and we were having to default, we'd be looking at, okay, do we have routes that we need to run less or do
Right.
we, because
Or how are
we're
we
not
gonna cut back?
controlling all that. So it's hard to get a good feel. So
Well, that could be good because we then have to pay the cost of
I
the
agree.
people
We'd have
to control
do it,
that.
to do it.
And if you look at what a lot of that increase is going for, it's the very same thing that we did this year for our own employees, which is try to bring the wages back up to be competitive with the private marketplace. It's
One comment, Mayor, if you don't mind. I give Debbie, a complete itemized breakdown of our financial positions. We account for all of our services in we will call them department. The city of Salina is not paying for 81 connection. They're not paying for what we're doing in Abilene. They're not paying for what we're doing in Concordia. They're not doing the we deduct them out. The Salina Regional Health Service gives us for that. Again, we started out as a local provider. We went from local to regional, and now we're statewide provider. But we separate, and Debbie has the cost centers on that, where we isolate each department and the expenses associated with all those departments. Is there a possibility of some inner, but it'd be minimal. So, yeah.
Okay, we just have a couple minutes here before we have to get to our 3:30, so.
What question about the KDOT funding? Is that, does the state assume that the local is picking up the other 30%? Or not?
No.
No,
the
they
state-
just-
The state, KDOT tells, yeah.
Or, like, is the state assuming that everything other than the 70% the KDOT pays, that we're paying?
Are you at liberty
No,
to obtain funds wherever you want to?
I'm sorry.
Are you at liberty to obtain funds wherever you want to?
Sure.
So that could be,
The
you could be,
KDOT
there could be
KDOT
grants
requirement
or,
is- Yeah, the KDOT requirement, if it costs X amount of dollars, let's just say $1 million, KDOT will give us $700,000 in that example. The match we have to come up with. KDOT doesn't specify where that match comes from or how we get to that match. It's our responsibility, OCCK's responsibility, to come up with that match.
But they back fares off the top to make that calculation.
Yes. Yeah.
So the other thing that I've mentioned before, and I feel like I should mention here, is I don't know the likelihood of examples of other funding sources. I do know of other cities that the entire bus service is a city department.
Yeah,
So
sure,
that
yeah.
certainly, there's
Yeah.
plenty of examples of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not advocating for that. I'm just telling you, there's others that it's.
A lot of the metropolitan areas have either as part of the mill or they have other funding. You know, we're one of the few private organizations that provide this much transportation and certainly are diversified as much as we are the most diversified provider within the state. It's easy if you only do one thing, but yeah, Mike's right. There's mill levies and there's certain that offset sales tax, whatever can offset other. And we're certainly not asking for that at this point.
well, if it was sales tax or mill levy, I'd feel like we need to ask the voters about that. In the context of things over 8 years, I feel like in 2021, we got $400,000 break, but they were gradually, and so maybe we've got some room to give there, but I don't know, I'd like policy-wise to get on a fixed track. If we set the increase at something that made a statement, 11 or 10, and with the goal of moving towards something realistic, 7 or 6, that would be, if it were just my one head up here deciding and negotiating, that's
No, I
kind of where
understand.
I'd be sitting. And
I
so
understand.
we can get a handle on this over time.
You know, certainly, and time is of the essence, I know that Joe can talk about. Also, the number we're providing is continuing to increase. Again, we look at public transportation as more than public transportation. We look at it access for the people who really need access to job, medical, whatever. It's more than just public transportation. It's getting access to people and how they can get to medical facility, how they can get to shopping, how they can get to work. So, but our numbers are certainly rebounded back to the pre-COVID numbers, and there's a lot of things. I'm not going to bore you with them today. A lot of things that's on the drawing table. Microtransit, KDOT's given us a pilot project, which I think is really, really kind of exciting. That's going to be Salina. So we're going to keep increasing services. So.
I'm going to ask other commissioners if you have any comments so we can kind of
Well,
wrap this up.
Admittedly, it's a bit of a quandary when you have a business model, and I guess I'll speak in business terms, where when your cost increase, but you can't increase the fees. So then it's kind of plan B. I mean, there's no denying the fact that a growing, vital community needs to have some form of mass transportation. And I guess if the mindset maybe should be, if based on if we're going to grow and we're going to be that community, maybe this is part of the equation. And I don't, the 11%, that's kind of a tough one, but there have been a lot of factors in our economy that kind of justify it. But it's not sustainable if it's an every year thing.
I would agree with that. I think inflation is finally coming under control. But I would urge you to look for some cost-cutting measures, because and other funding sources.
So one thing that I would like to share too, KU has done a study. We have gotten some results back from that. I'm hoping to share that. They gave us some feedback on what routes are making the most sense. What routes could we maybe take a detour, save a couple of miles? What hours of the day are we seeing the most people ride? No doubt, looking at those options would lend itself to potentially cutting some options. Do we need all buses, or do we need more buses? I'm sure you guys noticed that huge increase in paratransit. More people are trying to get to more places where our fixed route buses just don't go yet. And so that huge increase in that shows us we are needed. And we kept a lot of the people through COVID. When public transportation was don't you touch that during COVID, it was very scary for a lot of people. The fact that we retained so much ridership, it is essential that public transportation stay a part of our community. And then seeing that number grow over the last couple of years since everybody got a little bit more comfortable, vaccines were coming out, we see that number continuing to grow. I continually ride around. Every single bus I got on in the last month was packed, doubled up in every seat, potentially somebody with a walker or a wheelchair needing access to that lift. It is a very, very well used program, and many people would say, we want more, we want more. So the fact that we're able to do it at this cost, we're getting a premium service, and we're always open to feedback. Of course, we can talk about fares, we can talk about all those things. In this world, people are moving to free fares though, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But people are just asking for more opportunities, more services through public transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and there's, to close, I don't look at percentages sometimes much. I mean, it's a $90,000 increase, so it's fairly substantial when we look at it, so.
But of a large number.
Yeah.
We're talking about public transportation, moving people around the city. I have a feeling our population demographics have changed, and there are probably more folks who need the service than what the five of us, well, I interact with them every day because I come to my office, but we may be underestimating the number of folks.
And I guess that's what maybe bothers me. We need, and again, we need to move on because we're running a little behind on our lower Smoky Hill deal, but I don't see.
We pick this up
person there.
next Monday? If we don't finish today?
We can, but I mean, I guess we just need kind of.
Other meeting short?
Yeah, we might have time after the Lower Smoky
Okay.
Hill.
Okay, let's do that, and then we can, if we need to come back, so.
Okay. Pause.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
How are you guys? How are you?
Doing great.
How are you doing?
All righty. Is this on air?
Yep, it's on, is it, I guess we do this on air too?
You guys know how to
Do we
fix
do this
that.
on air too? I guess it
Yes.
doesn't, yep,
Yep.
I think
Yep.
so. You're
All right, I will call the July 17th meeting of the Lower Smoky Hill Water Supply Access District Incorporated meeting to order. Request confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes, yes.
Thought I could get that piece of candy out my mouth sooner, but it's gone now. Thank you. Can I have roll call, please?
Trent Davis,
Here.
Tom Toll. Carl Esping,
Here.
Carl Ryan,
Here.
Mike Hoppick.
Here.
Greg Linkowitz,
Here.
Bill Longbine.
Here.
All right, we have a public hearing today of our 2024 budget. And
The 2024 budget is, total revenue estimate is $106,078. Total expenses, $106,078. This is compared to the 2023 budget, which was $146,065. We discussed this at our May 8th meeting, went over the detail of these numbers. So today, basically, we're just looking for a motion to approve that document so that we could send that forward to the county clerk for approval and for certification with the state. I'll stand for any questions or comments.
I'm assuming since our budget went down, there was no reason to consider exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
No, there's no revenue neutral rate in
Yeah,
this
not
particular
applicable
item.
here.
Yeah,
but
this
yes.
is, yeah.
Well, it's actually listed on here, that's the reason I was, I mean, it's in italics, but it was referenced, I should put it that way. It wasn't
Okay,
under the column all the way to the
Oh,
right.
on the
Yeah.
certificate?
oh, yeah, the
Yeah,
state
is that
forms
the
have
state
that.
form?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Looks like the state's using their form for multiple applications.
Right.
Yes.
Any questions about the budget? Any public comment about the budget?
My only comment would be this year's budget and then look at next year's budget.
Is that a,
That's all I needed to say. It's a real wake-up call, if it holds.
is that a prophecy? Okay.
And I think we've
Yeah.
talked about it before, but having
Yeah.
worked in a community that has a Corps of Engineers lake, that periodic maintenance spikes your cost. And so that anticipated number next year includes a maintenance cost that's significantly more.
So then entertain a motion
Let's see,
to,
do you need to close the public hearing?
I'm sorry, thank you. Public hearing is closed. I guess I should ask if we had anyone online, but it doesn't, no, all right. Okay, public hearing is closed. Is there any motion to,
I move approval of the 2024 budget.
I'll second that.
been moved and seconded to approve the 2024 budget? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And we have minutes from May 8, 2023. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
President, I move we approve the minutes of May 8th, 2023.
Second?
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any corrections, additions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. New business. We need to elect our officers. This is our last meeting of, I won't call it our fiscal or academic year, but our, whatever our year is. So the next meeting would be in October, so we need to elect officers, so we'll be up and running for that. Of the city commissioners, the only two guaranteed to be here are Bill Longbine and Greg Linkowitz. All four positions are open. Entertain motions, nominations.
Well, normally, isn't the mayor has been the president?
Yeah,
That's generally been the case. I don't know that it's required,
that
but
was
that's kind of
our-
been how it's always been.
Our gentleman's agreement.
And
Well, Tom and Carl, would you like to remain as vice president and secretary?
One more year.
One more year.
I do.
and so that would, if we did it that way, would we make Commissioner Longbine or Commissioner Linkowitz the president, and the other one the treasurer? doesn't matter. I'll look at,
Make the
Secretary-
motion that,
Secretary and Treasurer is one office. No, it's two?
Nope, it's
It is
two.
separate?
It's two.
Okay.
it's separate, I believe.
yeah.
Okay.
You want to make a motion, Mr. Ryan? Go ahead.
I would move that we designate or elect as president of the Lower Smoky Hill Water Supply Access District, Vice Mayor at this present time, Bill Longbine, Vice President Tom Toll, Secretary Carl Esping, and Treasurer Mr. Linkowitz.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm sorry. Well, it's been moved and seconded. Do I need to close nominations?
I think you're fine if there's no alternate nominations. You
Okay,
can-
thank you. This slate would be Commissioner Longbine to be president, Tom Toll is vice president, secretary would be Carl Esping, and treasurer would be Greg Linkowitz. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. There are alternate days for the next meeting date in October. Are there any strong preferences or days that people wish to stay away from?
A lot of times we look to the farmers in terms of the season.
We got to be,
Hard to say, the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th and 23rd can all be really busy or nothing going on.
Just make a decision
Just
and
make
go
a
on.
decision.
Yeah.
You want to try on the front end or the back end?
I would suggest staying with the 16th, kind of coinciding with this date of the month, middle of the month.
I move we schedule a meeting on the 16th of October of 2023.
Second?
okay, it's been moved and seconded to have our next meeting on, I'm assuming that's a Monday, October the 16th at 3:30. Will that be enough time, you think, for us to discuss
Yeah.
We won't set a time until we get closer,
closer to the meeting? Okay, thanks.
depending on what else is going on.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Any unfinished or other business?
How's the water level at Canopolis?
That was going to be my unfinished business.
Okay.
Commissioner Longbine had asked me last week, and the lake is not rapidly working its way back up to the conservation pool. It's currently at 1461.7, so really it's hardly gained a foot in its course of time over the last couple of months. So it's not losing, but it's very slowly gaining, down 1.3 feet. They're releasing 50 CFS from Canopolis at this time because that's the discharge rate for this month, for July. And today, I think when Tom and I looked, we were a little over 50 CFS in the lake today. There's been a little rain and different things downstream, so we're seeing that. Talking with Tom, and maybe I won't talk for Tom, we talked about when you might need some water for your, probably soybeans, it sounded like.
We got, end of last week, the Menor gauge got down to about 36 CFS there. And that really starts crowding people's ability to pump very well. So we were gonna see what we were gonna do Monday. Well, we got a rain Friday, so we should make it to Friday before we, hopefully, some releases out of our storage and maybe some releases out of your storage will keep the river fresh enough. We've had rains, which have helped a lot, and these rains that we have been getting is keeping the stream bed wet, and that's probably one of our biggest culprits is the sandbars that are covered with grass, the trees that are sitting along the edge of the bank, that steals a lot of water from the river as it's flowing down. So these rains that we've been getting, whether it's the 20/100ths or the inch or whatever we get, I think has gone a long ways to keeping us pretty stable through the first month, this month of July. So the next probably 3 to 4 weeks will be real critical, our critical pumping time. We'll finish up irrigated corn, and then be in the middle of watering full season beans, and then there'll be some double crop beans coming on that will need to be watered, but by then the corn will be all done, and we'll be trading off. So just if we can get through a couple more weeks here, 3 weeks, we've got the water to release. That's the good news. The bad news is that on our end is to go out and get it distributed fairly, and we've got half a dozen, maybe 10 guys that did not purchase water that will have to shut their pumps off because they don't have any, did not buy in. So that's kind of the alley part of that deal, is going out and telling somebody that they're done pumping until the river returns to normal flow. So
Is there any option for them to get in? And how do you get the additional release? You just pick up the phone and call somebody and say, I want to tap my reservoir?
Yes. I'm working on the logistics of this, since we haven't gone through it since 12. But yeah, we'll talk to the Division of Water Resources out at Stockton, and we'll coordinate a release with them, find out how much everybody's pumping, who's all going to be on, and how much they're going to need, and then we will release accordingly. The good news is that we've got this solid 50 CFS release from the Corps right now that we have negotiated over the years for the summer months, and that really helps. Really has been a big help. So, like I said, another 10, 15 CFS coming down the river. I'm hoping that, I don't want to drain the reservoir any harder than we have to. We could make bigger releases if we had to, but I think that would come close to taking care of it.
Question, when a release is made, what's the time frame from the time the release starts until it's done and people have to extract the water? What block of time are you looking at?
Well, to get the water to you,
Here, yes.
would take about 3 days.
Yeah, somewhere between 2.5, 3 days,
Right.
depending upon flow.
So it takes a while to get that water all the way down here. And the worst is, the lower we let it get, the longer it takes it to get here. So we're trying to be a little proactive. There is a 20 CFS minimum stream flow at Menor that we gauge by, and that's the bare minimum, but we don't want to get close to that number, because that's so low that it's just puddles running, streaming here and there. So the 30 to 40, down to 30 would be about a bare minimum.
One of the things that we're facing now is that there's about a number of people, less than 10, that don't have any water to pump. Because the stream has moved to one side of the river or the other side. There's ways to move those around, but those people don't have a fair understanding, and our telephones ring constantly. But we're trying to get them to cooperate together, I guess is what to say.
The water or Division of Water Resources and the Corps will allow you to maneuver the water from one side of the river to the other.
Who's your enforcement arm if folks don't want to cooperate?
Who would be the enforcement on that? Well, it depends upon how crazy you get. If you start throwing tannerite down there, I'm sure the Corps' gonna come see you.
Yeah.
Typically, it'd be DWR.
Yes.
DWR.
Yeah.
A Stockton office will come and speak with those irrigators or the city that needs to be spoke with.
They're good to work with, too.
Yeah. We've gone as far as, you've seen these little mini excavators that can get down and run in low water. Those guys have gone and dug that. We've placed some, I've used hay bales in the past, dropped a couple trees along the bank, forced the water to do the other side. This year we used, the Audis out here manufacture those rolls that you see, mats that you see on the interstates and stuff to hold washing on reconstruction. And we got a couple of 12-inch tubes that were 25 feet long and placed that in the river, trying to move some of the water to our side. Get pretty inventive. Next time I'll just go get sandbags though.
Thank you. I think those of us who are not out there need that education every once in a while.
Probably more than you wanted to know.
No, well, I think it's good that we're on the same side. Right. All right, any other new business, other business, unfinished? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Carl and Tom, there's a certificate up here you guys need to sign too.
You have 2 minutes.
I just happened to look in my file, so over here, it looks like we're all supposed to sign.
Guess I better put the red ink pen down. or-
Okay, it is 4 o'clock. I will call the July 17th, 2023 Salina City Commission regular meeting to order. I will first look at staff confirming that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
With that, may we have a roll call?
Mayor Hoppick.
Here?
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Linkowitz.
Here.
Commissioner Longbine.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here?
Okay, are those who able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have no awards or proclamations or public hearings, so that will bring us to the consent agenda.
Item 5.1, approve the minutes of the meeting of July 10, 2023. Item 5.2, award the bid for project number 23018A, 2023 minor concrete pavement repair for $96,428.90 with a 5% construction contingency for a total project authorization not to exceed $101,250.35 and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Morgan Brothers Construction of La Crosse, Kansas, upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the bid documents.
Okay, is there an item that a commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda? With that, I would
Mayor, I
accept.
move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve consent agenda item 5.1 and 5.2. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to administration, item 6.1.
Item 6.1, approve ordinance number 23-11162 on second reading, changing the zoning district classification of a 12.64 acre tract of land located on the east side of North Ohio Street from C7 to A1, and A1 to I2 to allow a utility company contractor to relocate to the former Harley-Davidson dealership site.
Okay, ordinance number 23-11162 was passed on first reading on July 10th. Since that time, no comments have been received. Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
No.
Are there any comments or questions from the public? If not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 23-111162 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 23-11162 on second reading. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Linkowitz.
Aye.
Commissioner Longbine.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan.
Aye.
Mayor Hoppick.
Aye. That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to item 6.2.
Item 6.2, authorize publication of the notice of budget hearing for the 2024 budget, which sets August 28th, 2023 as the date for public hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and the date for public hearing on the 2024 budget, and establishes the maximum limits of the 2024 budget.
Ms. Pack.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Debbie Pack, Director of Finance Administration. Statute requires that we hold a public hearing for two reasons during the budget process. One is if the city elects to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and also one to actually give the public comment, opportunity for comment on the actual adoption of the public budget. City Commission has directed staff to budget exceeding the revenue neutral rate. So we are going to be setting that date, and during the June 26th study session, you indicated that additional tax revenue should go to the debt service fund. So as part of the proposal, the maximum mill levy would be 29.6020 mills. That mill levy will allocate the budget according to the numbers 11,543,707 to the general fund and 3,879,509 to the bond and interest fund, for a total tax levy revenue amount of $15,423,210. The remainder of the budget process includes us notifying the county that we are going to exceed the revenue neutral rate. The county will then send notification to all taxpayers of all taxing jurisdictions intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. We will have to publish our hearing, a notice of our hearing prior to August 18th. August 28th, we will hold our public hearings both on the revenue neutral rate exceeding and on the 2024 budget. We'll also do the first reading of the ordinance for the 2024 budget on August 28th. We'll come back on September 11th, because that would be our next meeting, and do the second reading of the ordinance for the budget and adopt all of the other ancillary items that are related to the 2024 budget. Because we are exceeding the revenue neutral rate, the city has until October 1st to certify that to the county. After publication, the importance of that is that we cannot increase our tax revenue or our mill levy rate, and so this is the reason we have to set this date and notify the public of those numbers. So your action today is just to make a motion to authorize that publication and set those dates and amounts for the 2024 budget. I would stand for any questions.
Okay, I'll start to my left.
You mentioned that the additional revenue will be dedicated to bond and interest, so
Yes.
I've been gone.
Yep.
So would you explain the logic of putting it in that place as opposed to making it more flexibly used?
Well, it's flexible either way, but for this particular year, there was $388,000 available. That would be additional revenue based on the mill levy rate that we set. And during that study session that we talked about that, we presented a debt service plan that would enable us to actually do some of the projects that came out of strategic planning, not limited to the Magnolia East and West Street projects and the bridge, and some other projects. And so we felt like if we were able to dedicate that additional funding to the debt service plan, it would allow us to do a lot of those projects that we had in the strategic planning.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Completely agree.
Commissioner Davis?
No question.
Questions?
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the public? Okay, if not, I will bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move to authorize publication of the notice to exceed revenue neutral rate public hearing and notice of budget public hearing for the 2024 budget, which sets August 28th as the date for the public hearings and establishes the maximum property tax revenue at $15,423,210 and estimated mill levy rate of 29.6020, with the final mill levy rate being determined by the county clerk upon final certification.
Second?
Okay, I'm not sure how to make this any shorter, so I guess I'll just repeat it. So we have a motion and a second authorizing the publication of the notice to exceed revenue neutral rate public hearing and notice of budget public hearing for the 2024 budget, which sets August 28th as the date for the public hearings and establishes the maximum property tax revenue at $15,423,210 and estimated mill levy rate of 29.602, with the final mill levy rate being determined by the county clerk upon final certification. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item passes 5-0. That will bring us to item 6.3.
Item 6.3, consider bids received for project number 23006, 2023 Broadway medians.
Okay, Mr. Stack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We've had, I feel like, a good year so far on bids. This one didn't go so well, so we have to explain this one a little more and go through it.
This is a project we talked about the last few years, actually one that's been kind of on the radar for a lot of years. We were able to make some improvements a couple years ago with the mill and overlay and get rid of some of the medians there on Broadway. Really made a good impact, feel like, for a pretty reasonable price at the time to just mill them out and pave them with asphalt. So the ones that we are keeping, we decided we needed to make them look better. And so that was our goal this year with a 3-phase project over the next few years, basically. We talked about that last year. So this project was for the medians. This is State Street, South Street, and Crawford. Next slide, please. Okay, and then lastly, there was some curb repair as well. We added some curb repair on the South 9th corridor here as well. So I'll show you a few pictures of that here coming up. Next slide, please. So that was our study session last year, April of 22. So it wasn't that long ago. We feel like we had some numbers then that were reasonable. This was, as you know, the medians out there look pretty bad. We were going to make some improvements. We kind of settled on the replacing the asphalt curbs with the basically concrete and bricks is what we decided on. Next slide, please. Recommendations here, we had a $261,000 first phase for shortening. This is the one around the Quick Star. There's a Quick Star gas station there just south of State Street. So that one's kind of been, it really has a lot of driveways in there that are affected. So we were going to shorten that to allow a median for turns, but not really to block traffic from a lot of those businesses. So we're going to help that out. Affordable cuts and others. That's I think it's right in front of Ace Hardware was this one around South Street, and then this one at the south side of Crawford. Just replacing those. Really, they're just an ugly asphalt right now, so they would be concrete and brick. So that was our recommendation last year, $261,000. So costs have gone up. Seems like a lot over the last year, and maybe just not the best time to bid it. But next slide. That's kind of what it looks like when you do a median nose. You do concrete brick pavers, new curbs. It doesn't look that complex, but it's a process. If you just do pavement or you do asphalt or grass, those are kind of one. This is a 3-phase process to a certain extent. So you have to put the concrete base in first, then you put the sand down, then you put the bricks down, then you put the sand in the bricks. It is a definitely a laborious process. Next slide, please. This isn't the best picture, but this is what those should look like. It's up on North 9th Street. Thanks, Jacob. North 9th Street, we did a kind of a landscaping project in the early 2010 timeframe, I guess, and those are holding up well. You basically have a concrete nose, you have your sign, and you have these brick pavers that go back, and it looks pretty good. They've lasted pretty well. I feel like it's a good project, or could be a good project. Next slide, please.
I'm going to interject here, Dan. You might speak to the likelihood of weeds. We're pleasantly surprised that they don't necessarily grow weeds because of the
That's a good example of those on North 9th Street have not been a weed problem. So the concrete base, the sand and the bricks seems to have worked. Now 9th Street's a little suspect sometimes. We have, I feel like we have some out there sometimes, but try to do the same as we try to do the same process as North 9th Street side, and I think that was our goal. This is an example of the median south of Crawford. This is McDonald's, Sunset Plaza, the old Big Cheese Pizza over here. So it's just really just replacing that median. Next slide, please. Here's the north side of Crawford. Just kind of feel like we have to keep it till you get the turn lane. This is the turn lane, so you have to keep it long enough to get the turn lane, be able to put people in the turn lane, then you can end it. So we'd end it about, can't remember if that's the club car wash or kind of close to the club car wash, basically. Next slide, please. This is at South Street. Maggie Mays is there, so you can just kind of see it's about what's there now, I think. So next slide, please. This is the one at Ace Hardware, and the affordable cuts is over here. This one is really large, and we don't feel like we need that quite as long as we do as it is out there now. So it would be shortened some, and then there'd be some more paving, and the turn lane would be in there. Next slide, please. And then here's the big shortening one at south side of State Street. Quick Star gas station is here. The Stujo's car wash is here, so you can just tell we're going to make enough room for a turn lane and protect the turn lane, but other than that, we feel like we could shorten that one. So that was the goal of the project. Still going to be the goal of the project eventually. That's just thought I'd refresh everybody's memory. I was a little confused even on what scope and which phase we were working on, because we've done quite a bit out there, but we're still a few things to repair in this corridor. Next slide, please. All right, this is an example of the curbs on South Ninth Street. Ninth Street isn't too bad, but there's just some areas of Ninth Street where the curbs are just kind of falling apart and junk and need repaired. So that was another thing we're going to add to this project. Next slide, please. That's a good example of kind of the median noses that are on Ninth Street that definitely they're either yellow curb or they're just falling apart. And so we're trying to repair those. This was one of the alternates that we had. Just kind of show you the Magnolia area where it's that rubber mulch. That's another option that maybe we could investigate further. And then lastly down here is the stamped concrete. I don't feel like that's a great picture. That's over at CVS Pharmacy. It's kind of pinkish, doesn't look very good. Stuff we just did at Bill Burke I think looks better, and so I tried to take a picture of that. There it is. So I don't know if it's any better. It still looks pink actually, so maybe it's not any better. But red tinted stamped concrete is an option, and maybe that's something we could work on with some contractors. Say, okay, is this easier than bricks? It may be. I don't know. But if that's something we want to talk more about today. Next slide, please. And the last one there, Jacob, you can blow it up. That's my bullets for the blue sheet. When we opened the bids, we could tell. We identified that there was possibly an error on these bids. That was a bummer because it was expensive, but it was close to the engineer's estimate actually. But then we could tell that the low bidder had a bid at $3,850 for brick paver installation. Like, wow, that's probably not fair, not reasonable at all. Especially since ours was at $150 and then Smoky Hills was at $398. So it was like, okay, something's wrong with this. So we asked them, or talked with them about it, and then per the statutes, basically, they made an error. It's just an error, and the statutes allow them to withdraw their bid without penalty. And so we asked them if they want to do that. Yes, they did. So there's no other way really to do it. We you try to figure out a way to, well, they obviously made an error. Let's just multiply it times whatever their error was and get their bid. You just can't do that. So there's just no way to rebid the whole thing eventually unless they want to honor that bid. And that has happened in the past. There's been some errors that we find in a bid, but it's not a big deal. It's close enough. They say they'll honor it anyway. In this case, it wasn't. They wouldn't do that. So factoring that in, a lot of the main costs, the brick pavers were just a lot more expensive, as well as the temporary traffic control. It's a lot of traffic control when you're working in the middle of the road, so that was a couple of pretty big items. Some of the options that we've talked through in this blue sheet are, I showed you a few pictures, replace it with raised tinted and stamped concrete or with pour-in-place rubber mulch. One more option we thought about, similar to downtown, we supply the brick. So we have a lot of brick streets in town. We have a brick pile. A lot of brick piles exist around Salina. Those bricks are 100 years old and they still look red. They're still doing great. So the clay bricks are awesome. They're rustic, and that's what we did on Santa Fe. So we thought, well, maybe that's an option we could look at too if you guys are interested in that. So that's a third option that we didn't have on the blue sheet, but is one maybe worth investigating. And I feel like with all these options, your options and our recommendation is the same. Reject them all and instruct us to investigate these things further and try again. That was my hope today, is that you would select option one, reject them, try again. Stand for questions.
Okay, I'll start.
My impression is that the stamped concrete looks like the best option as far as
Okay.
aesthetically and just bang for your buck.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Have we done the stamped concrete anywhere?
Yeah, Bill Burke entrance, you'll see it when you go into the
Oh,
Bill
that
Burke
is?
ballgame right now.
Okay.
Yep, it's brand new. Over at Sunset Park as well is recent. We did a stamped concrete over there.
Key off on 9th Street, I believe.
Is that stamped concrete?
On the east side, I believe it is.
Okay. few areas, but yeah, the stuff at Bill Burke and the stuff at Sunset Park is probably the best, latest examples that the city's done.
It seemed like that would require the least maintenance.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a different look. If you guys are, I'm glad to hear two of you are interested in that. It's definitely something that's
I wonder where Dan stands on this.
concrete pavement. Well, it's concrete pavement. It keeps the weeds out, and it's a single pour, and then they just got to make sure they get the stamp on there, and it's okay. It's not perfect, but it's not bad.
The stamped part would not be where anyone is walking. Or let me make that a question. Is the stamped part near where people, I'm thinking
Not
someone in a
normally,
wheelchair,
yeah.
is that a
Yeah, you're
bumpy service?
Not not designed that way.
normally
Ninth
not.
Street has areas of refuge in the middle of the roadway and kind of a dedicated sidewalk. Not to say that people might not use it that way, but not from an intentional design standpoint.
I'd say the stamped concrete would be, when you're talking to that, would be less intrusive than bricks, to me, from the stamped concrete I've seen.
I can't recall walking on, I probably have and didn't realize it, but crossing the street, it would only be if they happened for that, 3 or 4 seconds of rolling over the median.
Because there would be, if there was a place to cross a street, that would be concrete.
It'd be concrete
We'd have
sidewalk. Yeah,
concrete.
we really wouldn't.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
So that would be smooth there.
Right.
Yep, that'd be
okay.
smooth sidewalk, right? We would.
So now, for what it's
put you
worth,
on that.
aesthetically, the Iron Street improvement reused the bricks that Mr. Stack was describing as the crosswalks. Aesthetically, it looks really nice.
It looks good. I don't know if you've walked on that. Those are they're
Smooth.
somewhat rough. I don't know how
Gives
you
some
describe
traction
that,
if
but
you're
that's
in a wheelchair or,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
probably.
if I could back up, I misspoke. The area I was thinking of was Belmont, east of 9th Street, kind of south of Sonic, north of Cave Divers. There's a large expanse of stamped concrete there, and part of it you can actually drive over to cross the median if you're out and about and want to look at stamped concrete. And the conversation about pavers versus an alternate product was part of that study session conversation that we had. So not to lock you into that necessarily, but this bid didn't turn out favorably. We're trying to figure out a way to kind of use best management practices still as it relates to the bid. But if you want to have a broader conversation, or if you want to redirect in terms of moving away from pavers altogether, that would be appropriate as well, if you so choose.
Are the antique pavers, the old street pavers, are they hard to work with? Are they pretty clean? Can you just pick them up and put them down, or are they more labor intensive than might think? I mean, there's a trade-off there between the materials versus the labor, right?
There is. There's a lot of labor to them, but it did seem like this bid, we had a bid item in here for, on 9th Street, we were going to have to do the curbs and then relay the pavers that are already there. And so that bid price was quite a bit less. So it was almost like if we don't have to supply the pavers, and it seemed like the material costs concrete costs is not cheap, and the maybe the pavers are enough to, if you give them the bricks, and giving them would be, we'd have to find good bricks at our brick pile. Are they clean? Are they the same? We'd have to investigate that further, I guess, to be frank with you. I mean, Pavers has a good pile.
Cycle reuse. That's
Right.
just kind of
There's a
like
Right. Yeah, it's just something to maybe investigate further, but I don't think, hands down, really, stamped concrete probably is the winner if we're going with straight cost. If we're going with some aesthetics or some balance, we can do it. I always think alternate bids are an option. You can say, okay, well, I'll get to C. You have an option, or add alternates basically. Is you have an option to say, okay, bid this, and then what's the total price, and then you can compare instead of when you just say, oh, we just want bricks. Well, we want bricks, and that's what we got. So maybe we put some other options in there too, is one of the options.
I know CKF just did a little area with some stamped concrete that really, I mean, I think it looks really
Good.
nice. Yeah, it looks
Okay.
good.
Does that stand up to snow removal and
Of course, we're not going to be
shoveling?
We shouldn't be taking a snow grader
No,
over that
hopefully
because
pile it in those areas.
Yeah.
It'll hold the snow, but
In the State,
Again, this wouldn't be where people are walking.
Right.
Or driving on it.
in the State Street median, actually, it's all concrete, and it looks pretty good. I mean, you
Right.
to me, you could almost shorten it and leave it the way it is.
That's a
'cause-
good point. That's a good point, because that one, it's narrow enough, that one's just gonna stay concrete. We were just gonna shorten it. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly. We had to repair some curbs.
So
on the
you're
way.
not going to do, I was going
Not
to say,
gonna-
because
it
that one
wasn't
looks
wide
good.
enough
The
for
the
bricks.
others at South Street, and when you get down to
Mm-hmm.
Crawford, those are asphalt in there, and it's all, it looks, yeah, it does
Yeah,
look
those
bad.
would get replaced, but
Yeah.
the ones that are concrete at State Street would just stay.
You're just
stay
leaving those,
concrete.
you're just going to shorten them, okay.
Correct.
That makes me feel better, okay.
And I drove down that way on the way up here, and that wide, taking those medians out, just that wide open view really changed the aesthetics of that whole
Does.
area. And- But I'm gonna have to, I didn't know there was a difference between the pavers and the stamped concrete, so I'm gonna have to pay attention and check
Take a
out
look.
the stamped concrete.
Yep.
I've seen it used in so many different environments, luxury hotels, luxury homes. And I think there's a lot of times that we're walking on stamped concrete and we're not aware of it. That's just how viable a product it is. And of course, you have the benefit of not having weeds popping up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So if it deteriorates, you just cut out that section and report? And
That is the drawback.
hope it
Sometimes
matches.
it's hard to find the same tinted, to try to match that concrete. It's not quite like how good the paint guys are, at Lowe's or somewhere where you take in your sample and they match it perfect. It's not the way it is with concrete. So sometimes that is a little bit of a drawback. If the water line blows up and we have to match it, that could be a little bit of a challenge because it does fade over time, and then to try to match it later is a little bit of a challenge.
Matching the pattern isn't an issue?
No, the pattern's not too bad. No, we can do that. Yeah, you just have to saw cut, make sure your pattern fits in wherever you saw cut.
So I don't want to be presumptuous here, but I think what I'm hearing is, what I'm not hearing is a lot of strong preference for pavers, some receptivity to stamped concrete at least, which then, given the circumstances with the bid, if you want to provide direction to reject the bid, you can either leave it open for staff to have a broader scope, or if you want to specify a particular product or set of products, you could do that as well. We haven't talked a whole lot about poured rubber, and I'm not trying to force
Given
that
the only
conversation.
good
but-
number we got is 60% over the engineer's estimate, I'd say let's go
Yeah.
back to the
That's a
drawing board here.
No brainer? Okay, good.
So you're not willing to pay a premium for pavers, is what I'm hearing.
Since it's an item, I am going to open it up to the public before we bring it back
All right. Thank you.
for that, so thank you. Is there any comments or questions from the public on this item?
Yeah.
If you do, please come to the podium and give us your name and where you're from.
Cliff McClellan, I'm from here.
Yep, please say it in
Not
the,
originally, but
so
outside
that's
for it.
so people watching can.
Yeah.
know you.
I've worked with thousands of
And your
yards.
name again, I'm sorry.
So-
Name, please?
Cliff McClelland.
Okay.
I've worked with thousands of yards of concrete, help pour it for feeding systems and buildings, home basements, all that stuff. And I've never heard anyone refer to it as stamped concrete. So you want to explain that to me? To me, it's concrete. That's it.
Yeah.
It's
Jacob,
designed
can you
to
put the,
Yeah.
It's a
Slide
mimic
back up.
brick or
it has a pattern
Other
stamped into
patterns.
the top of it to make it look like paver bricks, even though it is. akin-
Okay. Now you got that clarified.
Okay.
Bricks are very durable, especially the older ones, if you can find them. And I know you got a good pile of them up there on North Street, East North Street. It's on the north side of the street. I think it's 700-800 block. And yeah, looks like bricks. Okay, never thought about it like that. Anyway, like I said, bricks are very durable. Concrete's very, very durable. And unless it gets a lot of traffic, it's good for decades. And bricks can last just as long, again, if they are or were made properly. So if you're thinking of using some other material, I would say forget it.
Okay.
All right.
Appreciate your input. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for further discussion or action?
I move we reject all bids and instruct staff to conduct bids with an expanded or altered scope of work.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reject all bids and instruct staff to conduct bids with an expanded or altered scope of work. And I think we've discussed what those may be. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Okay, that will bring us to item 6.4.
Item 6.4, excuse me, USDOT Central Air Service Request for Proposals, Response Community Comment Letter Authorization.
Mr. Scragg.
And I think this item has my name on it, but Tim Rogers, Executive Director from Salina Airport Authority, is here to provide you with an update. This is certainly something that we've been talking about at the governing body level and as a community for a while now. Some new developments that Tim can share, and I think he has his consultant Gary Foss on the line as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. If I can give you a brief overview and put this agenda item in the context of kind of what's happening nationally and kind of how Salina and the Salina Air Service fits into a national program. First, the Essential Air Service Program is a United States Department of Transportation program. It was established in the late 70s, early 80s to assist rural small communities with essential air service that was needed to sustain and grow local economies. In Kansas, there are the airports that benefit from the Essential Air Service Program: Salina, Hayes, Dodge City, Garden City, and Liberal, Kansas. The program nationally is a $394 million program as authorized by the United States Congress and then also appropriated by the Congress also. 35 states benefit from the program and 111 communities benefit. Of those 111 communities, SkyWest Airlines, that's the current provider for essential air service, as United Express. SkyWest Airlines serves 35 of those 111 communities. SkyWest Airlines started service at Salina in 2018. And since 2018, Salina's enplanements and total passengers have increased over 50%. Salina is seen as a successful essential air service community, successful in the response for the community, the county, and the region to that program. The entire aviation industry has been impacted by worker shortages. Manufacturing, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and the airline industry. And probably impacted the most have been the providers of essential air service, SkyWest Airlines, and the other air carriers that provide service to the small and rural communities. That's why they are working on different methods, different ways to provide the service, being more cost-effective, and also being able to address a drastic and significant pilot shortage. The pilot shortage is being addressed, hopefully by Congress through the Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act that is being considered by Congress now at this time. In fact, this week, both the U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives may be taking action on their final versions of this important piece of legislation that governs all aspects of FAA operations. Part of that is airline transport pilot qualifications and certifications. Right now, the mandatory retirement age for airline transport pilot is age 65. The legislation that's drafted by both the U.S. Senate and U.S. House increases that age to age 67. That helps a part of the issue in this national crisis we have with pilot shortages. Just takes too long for a student to graduate from the Kansas State University program and get to the point where they can fly as a regional airline pilot. So increasing the retirement age will also be consistent with other nations in Europe and Asia that have increased that pilot age. That increase in the pilot age and allowing that individual to fly at an older age is done with the constraint or with the safeguard of an airline transport pilot is required to have an FAA medical exam every 6 months. That individuals also required to have recurrent training, check rides by check flight instructors, simulator time. That's why we have one of the safest aviation systems in the world. Congress sets those standards. The Federal Aviation Administration certifies and carries out those standards that are met. The air carrier side, the U.S. Department of Transportation has a separate division that just handles air carrier fitness determinations. SkyWest Airlines, as a part of this request, submitted a proposal for a new operating subsidiary called SkyWest Charter. That proposal at this time is not being considered by the USDOT because SkyWest Charter has not received full air carrier fitness determination from the USDOT. That's why that's really not will be considered at this time. And then the other proposal submitted by the other air carrier, Denver Air Connection, because of the pilot shortage, they cannot commit to start service at Salina until July of 2024. That's not acceptable as far as a proposal in front of us. So getting to the two proposals and where we are at in this process, two proposals have been received, but they're really not either one's really suited for further consideration. What the Department of Transportation is asking for is, do we see it that way too as a community? Take those community comments, and then they would take those into account. And again, the DOT is responsible for making the selection. The USDOT makes a selection for an air carrier in an essential air service community. They only take community comments as a recommendation or as guidance. The contract is between the air carrier and the United States Department of Transportation. So what will happen with a response from the community that yes, we see that both proposals are not viable, then the USDOT will then schedule a new time for receiving proposals for essential air service at Salina, Kansas, probably in January 2024. Now, with this pilot shortage and with a lot of uncertainty within the Essential Air Service program across the nation, again, 111 communities, 35 states, there is uncertainty. Actually, we have found, with the assistance of our air service consultant, Gary Foss of the ArcStar Group, in essence, a safe harbor. So we know that our service will be the same as it is for the next 6 months or so. We're in the safe harbor. In fact, with Gary's assistance and working with United Airlines and SkyWest, we've drastically improved our scheduling. The Denver flight leaves earlier, Chicago flights at a better time. We're hitting banks that make more connections for Salina passengers in Denver and at Chicago, and our airfares continue to be very competitive. I can see the numbers just these past few weeks. We've seen a jump in numbers and with the schedule we have. That is kind of where the situation is right now. So this is an opportunity to provide an update to the commissioners and to the public. But the action at this time is ready to consider the recommended letter and then authorize the city manager to draft that letter and have the mayor sign that. We'll be asking the same of the county commissioners. The Airport Authority will take the same action, I believe, on Wednesday. The EDO, Salina Community Economic Development Organization, and the chamber will probably take an action, after when they have their first meeting. I think in August. They do not meet in July. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Gary Foss is on the line, and Gary can answer any questions that the commissioners have and he'll provide an accurate answer instead of the one I make up.
There are no questions.
So SkyWest is essentially locked in until a new carrier is assigned.
Yes, until a new selection is made. and that would either be SkyWest Airlines, which it could be SkyWest Charter, or another carrier. I will, at the time we can consider proposals, if these were two viable proposals, we'd be talking more about how SkyWest versus Denver Air Connection meets our community goals. SkyWest provides this opportunity and still has a desire to start, as they have pilots available. It's the one thing that's holding up a Houston type of service and adding flights, it's availability of pilots. As they can start to bring back flights and add cities, then we can work with somebody like SkyWest. We would be bringing to you with two viable proposals or just one viable proposal, what that does for the community as far as achieving our air service goals. Multiple hubs, partnerships with a major airline like United, fares, scheduling, and meeting those needs. But we don't have that today since we don't have two viable proposals or to share with you.
You talked a lot about the pilot shortage and qualifications. Just out of curiosity, is the qualifications and the hours for a passenger pilot the same as a cargo pilot?
I want to say it depends. Depending what kind of cargo pilot. And so Gary Fosk is best at answering those questions. Gary is a 20-year veteran at American Airlines. He operated American Eagle for American Airlines. He actually was the president, CEO of a Caribbean-based airline. And Gary, I'm going to let you take that question on and talk about the differences. And there's not a simple, straight answer. It depends upon the operating certificate. But we can also share with you what SkyWest Airlines has committed to the USDOT for all their operations moving forward. Gary. You may be muted, Gary, if you can unmute. There you
Hi.
go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Tim is right. In a heavily regulated industry like the airline industry, there's lots of different rules and regulations. But I think the active point here is that SkyWest Charter and their proposal will actually not just meet the mainline American Airlines, United Airlines, and Delta Airlines in particular, the thresholds that they require. SkyWest Charter will actually exceed those thresholds and frankly will exceed the thresholds of the existing SkyWest service, which meets the mainline passenger standards. So it's not really the comparison with a cargo airline that's important. It's a comparison with the other airlines that are carrying passengers out there. And again, you're not going to, with SkyWest, which is our recommendation, that, as Tim has outlined, we're not going to be at any lesser standard, but actually at a greater standard. They've committed to flying with two captains, not one. They've committed to making part of their what's called operating specifications pilots with at least 1,500 hours, and that's what American requires, and United and Delta is 1,500 hours. And because they'll be operating under this commuter authority, which is called Part 135, they'll be able to keep pilots after the mandatory retirement of 65, as Tim said, subject to 2 medical examinations conducted by the FAA on an annual basis. And so the pilots that would be affiliated with this new airline aren't going to be pilots with 1,500 hours. They're going to be pilots with 20,000 hours. They're going to be retirees from American Airlines and Delta and United that have been flying 777s. And so, far above any kind of cargo standards that are out there. Does that answer your question?
And again, as I indicated earlier, this issue may also this policy under the operating authority of SkyWest Charter is seeking from the USDOT has already been granted to a number of air carriers for decades now. So they're not seeking any operating authority that has not already been granted. But SkyWest Charter would be the largest operator under this commuter authority. But the issue may, the issue changes once Congress passes FAA reauthorization and age 65 mandatory retirement goes to age 67. But it opens up the pilot supply significantly, and that helps SkyWest Charter, SkyWest, and the industry as a whole. So that's why Congress is considering that. So there's still a lot of moving parts. Nice thing is we'll have this interval, 6 months, to see how things kind of shake out and settle, and see how Congress does on the legislation. See where SkyWest Charter ends up with their operating authority, and SkyWest decides which direction they want to go, either as under their SkyWest Airlines name or their operating entity, SkyWest Charter, their new subsidiary.
Okay, thank you.
No question.
No, I have none.
Question I have is, from talking to individuals, I believe how many are we meeting the goals out there as far as the number of individuals that are graduating from flight school? I know at one point flight schools were down because they were having troubles with having enough instructors. I guess do we see the shortage in pilots taking care of itself here in the near future?
I'll take a stab at it. And locally, then Gary has the broader view of what United and Delta and American are doing. The pilot shortage was identified by General Accountability Office, GAO reports, as long ago as 2019, 2015. It will be here with us, I think, for the next decade. The case, try to get to it quickly here. So K-State Salina, they're full at capacity, 400 students in the professional flight program. The limiting factor is not the number of students interested in becoming a professional pilot. It's not aircraft. They have a brand new fleet of aircraft. It's not facilities. It's instructor pilots for the type of work that they are for the instruction, not the full-time staff, but the part-time CFIs, certified flight instructors. What occurs right now is that young person builds their hours instructing at K-State Salina. They're getting paid, and they've increased the pay. The Kansas legislature has provided K-State Salina additional funds to increase the pay for CFI. But once that individual reaches, if they have a bachelor's degree, they can go on with as low as 1,000 hours. If they have an associate's degree, it's 1,250. And without a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, it's 1,500 hours. As soon as they get to that one of those numbers with their qualifications, boom, the regionals hire them, because the regionals are feeding the majors, and so there is a sequence going here. The increase of the retirement age from 65 to 67 provides kind of a buffer for the short term, but the airline industry, as we are seeing this summer, we're at capacity in the industry. People are traveling. They want to travel. International travel's up, domestic. So this will be an ongoing issue. So how do you, and that's what SkyWest wants to do, create an operating entity that is best suited to operate today in a pilot shortage and over the next decade with a pilot shortage. Gary, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's right. I think one way to think about it here, commissioners, is the industry, and Tim is right, it's actually been with us about 11 years now, the pilot shortage. So the industry was struggling as it grew pre-pandemic to come up with enough pilots. About 5,000 pilots per year retire, forced into mandatory retirement at age 65. During the pandemic, as the airlines were trying to survive, they laid off or early retired another 6,000. And so as in 2021 with the vaccine, as demand for air travel, people started getting on planes again, skyrocketed. You actually have demand at 130%, unrestricted demand, at 130% of the pre-pandemic level. More people want to travel, as they were cooped up and locked in and couldn't see loved ones or see customers. And so the airlines themselves have been trying to add back capacity. So they're trying to grow to a level that is actually higher than in 2019, but they can't get there because of the the pilot shortage and the deficit that they had. Part of the challenge that the airlines have also had, aside from pilots, is just supply chain issues. So they've had a tough time, like every other industry post-pandemic, in getting parts for the planes and in getting new planes coming off the production line. Those are, as in the world at large, are becoming ameliorated, those kind of supply chain issues. And so they are now bringing on more planes, the mainline carriers are. They are bringing on Dreamliners, 787s, and the other bigger planes that they need to satisfy the international demand. And those, with every plane that comes on, that takes 10 pairs of pilots. Every plane will take 20 pilots to operate at every physical plane, just given the number of hours that a pilot can fly. And so it's a challenge that got worse as many things did with the pandemic, and just demand coming back so quickly post-pandemic exacerbated what's a situation that's been with us for quite some time. So most of the industry CEOs are calling for another 5 years of pilot shortage, and they're working to try to come up with different creative approaches. They have approaches on the legislative front in terms of extending the retirement age. There's some different training standards being considered out there, and so it's a long-term issue. And with the smallest planes serving the smallest communities, it's the smaller communities that end up paying the price. So I want to say 77 cities right now have lost, 77 airports have lost air service, at least in whole or in part. And some fairly significant cities have lost all air service, places like Toledo, Ohio, for example, Ithaca, New York. And so there's, quite a dire situation on the regional side of the business, which we're being impacted by. And as Tim said, with SkyWest Charters trying to...
That was part of a question I really didn't want to ask, but you kind of went there, is should we have a concern that Salina could actually lose our essential air service?
I don't believe so. Going through this process, which was a good process. So interest by SkyWest Charter, interest by Denver Air Connection. There were 2 other air carriers who expressed interest, but they were not in a position to submit a proposal because they did not have enough pilots. Gary actually had discussions, a total of 5 different air carriers that listened, that took time to take the call, submitted information. So I would place Salina in the category that our traffic loads, our potential, and the potential here is seen by other carriers, just not SkyWest Charter. But I think as we go through this process, we will always have interest and be able to, and unlike some communities, there are communities, and most recently, these proposals do not occur at an exact time. So, but it could be a proposal last month, 3 proposals the month before. They go in different cycles. But there have been communities that have received 0 proposals for an EAS subsidy contract.
Exactly.
Do we have any other questions? I'm sorry.
If I could just add one thing, United Airlines actually indicated, Big United, we're talking about not SkyWest, actually indicated that Salina had the highest concentration of corporate traffic amongst all of their essential air service markets. And so United recognizes the potential, that Salina has, and amongst the EAS portfolio, Salina stands out in many ways. So as Tim said, you're in no danger of losing service.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Or the airlines granting scholarships to flight students to address the problem? And
The airlines are spending just tens of millions of dollars, if not more, probably,
Hundreds.
I'm talking high 50, 60 million. If you add it all up, it's probably $100 million just in that, without knowing exactly what they're providing. That's, in essence, somewhat proprietary. But I know SkyWest has students at K-State Salina that are in their cadet program. Republic Airlines has K-State Salina students in their pipeline program. Piedmont, the other carriers have K-State Salina professional flight students in the program, and those are the programs that help offset tuition and provide incentives. For example, student gets their instrument rating, commercial rating, and multi-engine rating. They get also, many of these agreements have bonuses in there that helps defray the tuition cost.
yeah, I know it's really, really expensive to get the flight hours.
Yeah, it is. It is. And K-State Salina's done a marvelous job of bringing in also scholarships for those students. And so,
And I know the late Bill Gross, chief flight instructor out there, had told me a long time ago that the CFIs get 1,000 hours and they're gone.
yeah. If they've got their bachelor's degree.
Exactly.
Does
That'd be
any commissioner have any question or comments on the actual letter that we will submit on behalf of the city? Okay, is there any comments or questions from the public? Okay. Yeah, Mr. Foss, do you have any further comments or anything?
Oh, no, I think that this is the right path. Salina is actually in a much better position than any other essential air service community here that I'm aware of in terms of being able to have a rebid in January of next year. Most of the other communities are being forced to carry on with their bids here today. There was enough interest in Salina, again, by SkyWest Charter and by Denver Air Connection, even though their bids were deemed to be outside of the boundaries that the Department of Transportation is looking for from a time standpoint, in the case of Denver Air Connection. But what a January rebid does for the community is it essentially says that your current United Airlines service will be continuing until, at the very earliest, the early part of next year, March or April of next year, and then ideally can transition into a not suitable, but another exemplary product, which is the other side of the SkyWest house, the SkyWest Charter operation there at that time. We have another client who's being forced to have their bid here and to go forward with it in another month, and they're not going to extend them, and they could very well be one of these communities that Tim's referring to that nobody bids, and so they have a lot more exposure risk, and there's quite a number of communities that are like that, even in Kansas. So Salina's well positioned. Tim used the word safe harbor, and I think that's entirely appropriate under these circumstances.
Mr. Foss, thank you for being with us today.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you for asking and for having me.
Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for further discussion or a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to execute the attached community comment letter as presented.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second authorizing the mayor to execute the attached community comment letter as presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That item passes 5-0. Mr. Rogers, thank you for being here today. Okay, we have no development business. That will bring us to other business. Is there an item a commissioner would like to bring before the group?
I do have one. Last week we agreed to allow Southview Estates to transition to selling the unsold duplexes, all but 4 of them. And I had some misgivings about the amount of city subsidy that was going into what would otherwise be an investment project at this point. But I received an unsolicited call from a citizen who had done his own investigation and was concerned that the square footage of the units was actually less than what the development agreement called for. I did not have the skill set or the time to immediately investigate that myself, so I did ask the city manager to assist me in that, and I was thankful for his efforts. If you look at the development agreement, in Schedule G, it references minimum square footage in the single-family homes to be 1,100 square feet, and in the townhouses, 1,000 square feet. In Schedule H, a little further through the document, it references the square footage in the single-family houses to be approximately 1,100 square feet, and in the townhouses, approximately 950 to 1,100 square feet. The development agreement also calls for certain minimum number of baths. The citizen who called said that the baths, he attended one of the open houses and said the baths were 3/4 baths with a shower instead of what we're used to, a tub and shower. But in the development agreement, bathroom is not defined tight enough to determine what type of bathroom is meant. But certainly there's some incongruity in the 2 schedules, in that one calls for an absolute minimum square footage, the other one references an approximate square footage. And if the minimum is the actual standard, and if some of these houses, as the citizen claimed, were actually less than that, then that would be I don't know if you'd use the term violation, but it would not follow the expectations of the development agreement. I was originally considering asking for a refund of the waived city building permit fees for the units that were going to be sold as opposed, or rented, or presumably rented by investors. That action would have to occur today, and if no one else makes that motion, we'd actually have to reconsider last week's action and then take that action. If no one else makes that motion, I'll consider that a dead issue. I won't make the motion myself. But I think we probably should ask staff to investigate further the difference between minimum and approximate values in the development agreement, and they have to go out with a tape measure, but to see what the actual square footages of the units are, to see if they are in compliance.
Can I make a comment here?
If I could say one thing to begin with, if we're going to take this issue up, I just want to pause if anyone has a conflict that they need to disclose.
That's where I was going to go. I believe I'm going to look at Commissioner Ryan before we get into discussion. Since this wasn't an agenda item, you didn't have that opportunity. So, thank you. That was.
Maybe you were thinking the same thing I was. Okay.
I wanted to give Mr. Ryan an opportunity to.
So I'm going to jump in, and the city legal counsel may need to add. So staff is looking at the square footage question. We became aware of it over lunch today and had a limited amount of time between then and the study session. So, and I think there are some, as you said, incongruities. You said it easier than I just did, between Schedule G and Schedule H. So there's some legal interpretation to be had there. Bond counsel helped draft the agreement. We reached out to them. They were on the road, and so they were just listening to me talk without any resources in front of them. So with respect to the question of compliance with the development agreement, that's something that staff has begun working on. And if it turns out to be that there is a violation, I don't think a motion to reconsider is necessary. That's something that we would bring back to you as just an item that needs to be taken up. The agreement also makes provision for remedies. A quick pass of that is an expectation that they correct the remedy. I don't know how practical it is to add square footage to townhomes after the fact. So we'd have to have some conversation about those remedies. But if the expectation is financial as it relates to, and I'm going to say alleged, I don't want to create some presumption prematurely, violations, I think we have an opportunity to take that up as just a standalone item, like any other agreement issue that might crop up. If you want to take up reconsideration of the permission you gave last week for other reasons, then a motion to reconsider is something that your rules of procedure provide that has to come up within a week or at the next at the meeting where the action was taken, or at the next regular meeting. So that's typically within the week. And that motion has to be made by someone that voted in the majority on the original motion, has to be seconded, and the motion to reconsider itself is voted on. If it passes, then you're right back where you started, where you were right before you voted on the item being reconsidered. Rules of procedure also provide that if you, outside of a motion to reconsider, want to take up a topic, you can do that by a motion and vote. And it takes a 2/3 majority if you want to put that item on the agenda the same day. It takes a majority if you want to put that item on the agenda for a future date. The time sensitivity with respect to this particular question is, I don't think there's time sensitivity related to possible violations. I think there is time sensitivity if you're just truly reconsidering the decision you made before, because they're relying on that prior decision. And that's probably as far as I should go in open session if you're headed down the path of reconsideration as it relates to just having second thoughts about the permission that was granted. Then my suggestion would be we probably need to have an executive session conversation. If your concern is limited to whether the terms of the agreement are being complied with, staff will work that through without any additional motion, and we'll certainly report back. If we find a violation, then that'll be something we'd have to take up.
And just like that, I'm not on a witch hunt, but I am interested in trying to find out why these units didn't sell. And if one of the reasons is they're just too small and aren't offering the product for the price that's being asked, that's something the developer will have to work out. But certainly if they are smaller than what they should be, then we're somewhat complicit in allowing it. So it's...
not to be difficult, you might have just unintentionally added a third topic there. There's the question of whether it meets the agreement, but then how the market's responding to them may be a third separate conversation, which isn't necessarily an action item as much as a kind of a discretionary conversation. And I guess my point is, no guarantees that, on the premise that they don't meet the square footage, no guarantees that if they did, that the market would respond differently. But no doubt, there's an expectation they meet the requirements of the agreement.
And I guess just to make mathematics simple, there are only 3 of us who could vote for reconsideration, and if I have to make the motion, chances are it's not going to pass. So the mayor or Commissioner Lankowitz would, practically speaking, have to make that motion, and I won't feel offended if you don't do it. But it's
we obviously have 2 separate items here. I'll ask a question of staff. As far as the action we took last week, has that document been delivered to the developer? And if so, was the developer required to sign off on it or anything?
It's been executed, delivered to them, executed, and returned to us.
Okay. To me, they're 2 separate items. That item, we made a decision based on the information we knew as far as we knew they had the MIH and so on and so forth. For me to rescind that would be kind of going back against the discussions we had. We thoroughly discussed it last week. I have a problem telling somebody yes and then turn around the next week, mainly when they're not even here to address that. So I'm not going to make that motion. I can tell that for sure, and I probably would not vote in favor of it. But I do believe that we do need to address the development agreement. I mean, that's an agreement that we entered into, that we both had certain benchmarks we had to meet, and if they have not done that, then I believe we have to. And again, I'm not sure where the square footage came from. I know when I built my house, the county had it at different than it was, and I had to finally take them the plans and said, here, verify where we're at, and my builder in that case was right. So
with respect to the agreement, I'm committing to you motion and formal vote or no. Staff will investigate that, and we will publicly report back to you. So,
and I do believe the developer needs to be made aware of that as soon as possible, so they can address that.
I think that would be my suggestion is, I was pretty much opposed to this, and my justification was there's a reason this property's not selling, the market's not buying it. And this is just another example. I think it'd be important that it get corrected, that they don't keep building 50 square feet less.
Yeah, and so I apologize if I'm talking too much or confusing the issue, but I just want to be abundantly clear. My assurance to you to act is related to whether the development agreement terms are investigating whether they fully comply with the development agreement or not. I don't think there's a motion necessary for that. If you're having misgivings more generally and want to reconsider the permissions you gave them, then I think that would take a motion to reconsider.
No, I'd be certainly quite satisfied with staff looking into the development agreement and moving forward.
That's the direction I'm kind of leaning. And I mean, are we talking only 50 square feet ballpark per unit? Is that what? Or was it, because I guess where I'm going with this is, if you measure, depending on who's measuring, and I'm just throwing this out there for, because I've seen fluctuations, and I'm sure Mayor Hoppick has as well with his business, but I mean, there's some folks that'll measure the outside of the building, corner to corner, versus interior, and you've got enough of a variance that could, in theory, be your 50 square feet, depending on how it's measured.
And without, for lack of a better word, trying it prematurely and only having a limited amount of time to kind of refresh my understanding, probably premature for me to jump in. But the first thing that's got to happen is we got to have some clarification of different provisions about what that minimum square footage was, and then the wording of those could provide some clarity of how that needs to be measured, and we can certainly research that further. I think do need to get the developers involved just so that we hear their response, and then we can report all
And
that back to you.
I think what I'm hearing here is that the commission is giving staff direction to address the development agreement, whether they're in compliance or not. And it's not for us to debate today, because I think it talked about minimum bathrooms, minimum bedrooms and stuff. So I think we leave that. I think without further discussion, we'll just leave that to staff to review and come back to us.
And one other issue, we should, would imagine, continue to use the word minimum throughout or approximate throughout. I mean, I'm assuming minimum is a much easier term to base discussion on.
Well, again, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but first blush on Appendix H is that was the plan, the narrative that was submitted to the state of Kansas. So that was kind of that first pass of here's what the plan looks like. Appendix G it ties back to more binding language in the agreement. And then I got to sort through that further in terms of bathrooms and square footages and other provisions in the agreement about how those appendixes are referenced. Okay. And I have an opinion, but I don't know if it's a fully informed opinion yet, so I probably should keep it to myself at the moment.
And I'm guessing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But and I apologize. If, just to be absolutely clear, if we end up concluding no development agreement issues, but you still think, in light of that, I still don't, I want to reconsider the decision we made, today would be the day to make that motion to reconsider.
I'll let that pass. That makes it easier for my fellow commissioners.
Okay. Have I misstated or overspoke? I certainly overspoke, but have I misstated?
No, I think that was all quite accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you think it is possible to take anything simple and complicate it, or what we do best is simplify the complicated ones, right?
That's why we have lawyers.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to bring? Commissioner Longbine, Commissioner Linkwitz?
Negative.
So staff does have one item for you.
Get Commissioner Ryan back before you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oops, sorry. Staff does have one item for you, and that is an executive session. But we need to, what we've said is we'll do citizens forums before we do executive sessions, but I guess other business is the possible location to add that item to the agenda. So we've got a motion and wording for you, but essentially we're suggesting an executive session to discuss with legal counsel legal considerations relating to the ruling from Salina County District Court on the motion for summary judgment in the case of Tim LePage and the city of Salina. So trying to encapsulate that just a little bit for the purposes of adding it to the agenda.
So we need
just
to make
an
a motion
executive
to add
session.
it to our agenda following citizens forum.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to do that?
I move we add an executive session following the citizens forum.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session following citizens forum to address summary judgment on.
Yeah, we'll give you the
page.
motion before we actually adjourn once we get to that.
Okay. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. We will add executive session. Okay, that will bring us to citizens forum. This is an opportunity for individuals to come forward and discuss an item that has not been brought before the commission. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And please give us your name, if you would, please.
My name is Annie Bates, and I'm from Osage Avenue. I am here this afternoon to speak, advocate for the senior citizen. I am one, and I'm proud to be one. And if you guys live long enough, you're going to get where I am. And I'm having a problem in the summertime and in the wintertime. I'm talking about myself now. But I have had my neighbor to be out in her yard trying to do her yards, you mow, pulling down a line, and she had a stroke and didn't come out of it. So I'm advocating for the elderly people that Salina will give the senior citizen some kind of advocation of people that they can trust to come in their yard or go in their backyard or go in their home and feel safe. This is not just a couple. These are single women, and they having a problem with letting someone into their home. I am one of them. I trust them, but then when I got home, I found out that it wasn't really someone to trust. They need a person, a better bureau, and I'm asking the commission meeting to make an agenda with people that they can trust. You guys know every senior citizen that own a fixed income, and if you don't, you know where to get it from. I don't, but I'm advocating for them. I'm healthy. I had to end up calling 4 people to cut my yard, do my lawn. Every one of those 4 gave me their word that they're gonna come back and do it. The next 2 weeks, I didn't hear nothing from them. They didn't call, didn't report it, didn't do nothing, didn't do anything. They could have called. So 3 days ago, I got a salutation in my mail that the city gonna cut my grass, but I had to pay a big price for it. I had a lawnmower, and it was in the shop being serviced, and I was waiting for it to come back for myself to cut my lawn. And I think that the Salina City, and I've been here about 24 years or more, and I've been cutting my grass all the time, but then I stopped and said, give it to the children. We need to embrace those children, teach them how to work. They need to know how to work. I'm not going there, but I'm just saying, Salina need to embrace us. They need to embrace us. And I'm speaking for all of them. I don't know whether anyone had ever been here to complain about it. The trees and things, we have to pay for it. We are retired people. Some have the foreign to have somebody come in, and if you do, you're afraid to let them in the house. What are you gonna do? What can we do? I'm advocating for them. And this summer, it been very, very hot. And I couldn't go out there. I could do it because, thank God, I'm strong. I don't take no medicine. I'm not just going through my life, but I'm telling you, in order for Salina to do something for the summer and the winter, some of the elderly people have snow in their driveway. Haven't been down their driveway for weeks because they have nobody to shove it, nobody to cut the grass. So have I cut mine. And I'm asking, I came down here early this morning to find out where I could come to just send us a little brochure with people that you can trust. We haven't been able to trust anybody for years to come in your household and put you a lock on without worrying about what's gonna happen. And we only have a few more years to live. But I'm hoping that we'll have a long time to live. And everybody in here. And it's coming from my heart. I know people that in their home have to order grocery. They're afraid to go out. They're afraid to walk. And they need to walk. I walk.
Okay, thank you.
But they need to walk.
Yep.
They go to the Y. They can't be there at peace because everybody thinks you should be home dying. That's not Salina.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and I'll...
That is not Salina.
Mrs. Bates, does your grass still need to be mowed?
Excuse me?
Does the grass still need to be mowed? Your grass?
I didn't understand what he said.
He said, does your grass still need to be mowed?
I did it.
Oh, you did it, okay.
I did it. After they done put the salutation in my mailbox, and I think it had been, it had been there for days. He must have, whoever did it didn't come back because I had did it myself. I got neighbors, remind you, stood in that door and looked at me, did my lawn. And I did it with pride. Sweat like nobody's business. Salina, we need to do something for us. We work hard. We really worked hard. And our last days should be at peace.
Okay.
A lot of the people don't eat because they want to pay your tax.
Okay.
My tax too.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time, and I know, I know, you know, services our senior center offers, or, you know, she talked about places. So if we could get your contact information, we'll see if we have any information that we could help you with.
It's not so much me now, because
It's
I'm still moving.
yeah.
Every day, driving my car, going my way. But so many other people don't. They can't go to the doctor, they can't go no place. They up in that house, can't even let the window up. They afraid to let the window up. And I knew the time that we didn't have to lock our doors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I feel so released advocating for mature people like me. And have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Norman Mandel, Salina. I was discussing with the two gentlemen from the Water District about this water issue. These lakes are Corps of Engineers. It's federal law. They can't mess with it. Next question, in your future discussions at a study session, are you discussing about the trains blocking these crossings? Again, that's federal regulated. You can't touch them. Why? Because the railroads have an agreement with the government in the time of an emergency, military. You ever seen one of these convoy trains go through town? They don't stop. They don't go 20 miles an hour either. They got to move military equipment quick. And with Mr. Rogers' issue about pilots, we're short of pilots in the military. Nobody wants to fly planes anymore. It's too much work. And if your staff is overworked for your commission meetings, well, maybe you ought to hire some more staff. But you won't do that. And I got another reading here, federal issues. The city of Salina is occupying land of the Pawnee Nations, right here, this magazine. So you better be careful about who owns this land. We're going clear back to 1754. Even K-State has announced about this occupation of this land. K-State has announced that the land at the Kaw Nation down at Milford is occupying Native American lands. This is getting a bigger issue than you know here in Kansas. So federal law overruled state law.
Okay, is there anybody else that has an item? My name is Tiffany Moss, and I'm from Lindsborg. But I'm a big fan of Salina. I'm a business owner, a community volunteer, a mother of 6, grandmother of 2, and wife to a disabled veteran. I am here today to present to you an idea that will cost the city of Salina nothing, but could benefit the city, county, and even in the state in ways that could never be measured. Some of what I have to say is sad and even gruesome. I apologize if my comments cause anyone pain. It is estimated that in the United States, an infant is abandoned every 3 days. The hard numbers only reflect those that are found, often deceased, in a dumpster or trash can. Those are the known cases. But this other staggering statistic offers a more realistic number. Those that are taken to the landfill and never found, never given a name or a proper burial.
The original version of the Safe Haven law in Kansas was passed in 2007. This year, our legislation went a step further, and in May, they amended the Safe Haven law to allow for the use of infant refugee baskets. However, no one in the state has attempted to set up a baby box until now. These boxes are an extension of the original law, a true last resort. It offers anonymity to the surrendering family and removes the shame of having to look someone in the eye. It removes common barriers of face-to-face surrender, such as criminal background, immigration status, or in-person communication, something that our younger generations struggle with. These babies are almost never born at hospitals. They are born to young mothers who have hidden their pregnancy or are even unaware of their pregnancy or until they are giving birth in a bathroom somewhere. You don't have to look very hard to find these stories in the news, even as recently as last week. Some end in beautiful stories of adoption, while others end in tragedy. Kansas does not have an extensive history of infant abandonments that we know of. In fact, there has only been one known case in the past 6 years. Indiana had the same statistics, but they started placing these boxes anyway. They have had 11 safe surrenders since the use of their boxes started in 2017, and they have coached 3 other individuals to place their infants into the hands of firefighters through their crisis line. Safe Haven Baby Boxes is a nonprofit organization that has placed over 153 boxes in the past 6 years in several states, leading to the safe surrender of 33 infants. As close to us as Oklahoma City. They not only build the boxes, but they train the staff at the location and on the protocols that are followed when an infant is surrendered. My goal is to raise all the funds needed, roughly $18,000 through third-party and private donations, leaving nothing for the city to do but sign the contract allowing for placement of the box at an appropriate location. I believe that Salina has the unique opportunity to be the first in the state of Kansas to sponsor and place one of these Safe Haven baby boxes within its limits. My vision would be to have the box installed at Fire Station 1, due to its location in the downtown area and its proximity to Salina Regional. The majority of these boxes are installed at firehouses. Statistics show that mothers they trust firefighters. I have spoken to Fire Chief Tony Snyder and have his full support to carry out this mission. He even called me from his hospital recovery bed last week to tell me in person after receiving my email. There are many details to work out, and I will lean into the guidance and expertise of those trusted with the management of the city when it comes to those nuances. I'm almost done. I have assembled packets of information for each of you, and I'll be around after the meeting to answer any questions that I can. There isn't an ordinance I need you to pass. There are no funds that need to be allocated. This doesn't even require this commission to do anything, but I want your support, and I'm asking for it tonight. Let's be innovators and forward thinkers, and let's be the first city in Kansas to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. And I'll have you hand those to the clerk, and then she'll hand them out to us after the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there anyone else? If not, I'll bring it back to, how long do we need?
That was going to be
Let's
my
try
question.
20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Please.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Mayor, I move the City Commission recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss legal counsel the subject of the legal considerations resulting from the ruling of Saline County District Court on city's motion for summary judgment in the case of Tim LePage versus City of Salina et al., based upon the need for consultation with an attorney for the public body, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship pursuant to KSA 75-4319B subsection 2. The open meeting will resume in this room at 5:55 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move into executive session for 20 minutes, resuming in this room at 5:55. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We will be back in 20 minutes. That's right. Okay, we are back in session, and we do not have any action to take at this point, so I will accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I didn't think so. We'll see everyone next week.